414 Welcome, warmth. Zhang Weiman's face lit up. He agreed. The big shot who bought 51% of Lianjia real estate in one fell swoop had agreed to meet and guide them in their work. He had to seize this opportunity to get Lin Fan to increase his support for Lianjia. Only in this way could Lianjia survive for a long time. At this moment, Lin Fan said, "However, I won't go to the central headquarters, you know, the branch in Washington Palace, right?" Zhang Weiman could not help but be stunned. "I do." "That's good, let's meet there tomorrow afternoon," Lin Fan said. Meet there. If he remembered correctly, it was only a very small branch, right? Even though he thought so, Zhang Weiman did not dare to hesitate and said, "All right, Mr. Lin, I'll be waiting for you at the Washington Palace branch tomorrow." As long as Lin Fan was willing to meet, the location was no problem. The next day the sky was clear. "How many worms did you eat today?" "One. Me too." Lin Fan opened his eyes as the sparrows outside the window chirped. However, he did not get up immediately. Instead, he continued to lie on the bed for a while before slowly getting up. He spent 30,000 yuan to get a 2-star Michelin restaurant to deliver more than 10 different dishes. Lin Fan ate while playing with his phone, looking extremely relaxed. Unknowingly, his phone vibrated slightly. 12:00 p.m. The red packets were here. Ding, congratulations, you've received 5 yuan. Ding, congratulations, you've received 23 yuan. Ding, congratulations, you've received 9,999 yuan. Ding, congratulations, you've received 100 yuan. Today, Lin Fan earned a total of 31,241 yuan. Lin Fan muttered, "It's already 12 p.m., isn't that too fast?" He rubbed his still round belly and said, "In other words, I used 30,000 yuan to eat breakfast and lunch. I'm being too frugal." Lin Fan touched his nose and said, "It's about time to go to Lianjia." After saying that, Lin Fan walked outside and saw a brand new Rolls-Royce Phantom. However, he did not even spare it a second glance as he drove the Cullinan straight ahead. At this moment, at Lianjia's branch in Washington Palace. Last night, the staff received a notice from the headquarters that Chairman Zhang Weiman would be bringing a large number of executives to welcome a very distinguished guest. They had to decorate the branch before noon. Hence, early in the morning, many renovation workers and design workers gathered together. There was strength in numbers. In just one morning, the branch office had completely changed from start to finish. The entire area had more than doubled in size. The walls, floors, and office supplies were all brand new, and the surroundings were filled with bright flowers. In front of the main entrance was a furry red carpet. It looked extremely festive and grand. Zhang Weiman and the executives had arrived at the entrance of the office early in the morning, waiting quietly and looking around. Not far away, the employees of the branch were discussing from time to time. "Tell me, which distinguished guest are we welcoming today?" "I don't know. Could it be the leader of Jiangbei?" "Maybe not. Besides, the higher-ups of Jiangbei should head to the headquarters that was built not long ago, right?" Yes. Manager Han, do you know?" Han Tian looked at the executives in the distance and shook her head. "I don't know either, however, this is also a good thing for us." When the employees heard this, they all smiled. Yes, it was. It was good news. This was the first time they had seen so many higher-ups of the company. If they could leave a good impression on them, it would be a great thing for their future development. In addition, even if they did not leave an impression, their office had been renovated. At this moment, the tall and cool Cullinan drove over from afar. Then Lin Fan slowly got out of the car. Seeing this, Chairman Zhang Weiman was the first to greet him. He said with a smile, "Mr. Lin, welcome." Then the executives behind Zhang Weiman said in unison, "Mr. Lin, welcome." Han Tian and the others, who were standing not far away, were stunned. "It's Mr. Lin. The chairman and the others are here to welcome Mr. Lin." As they spoke, all the employees looked at Han Tian with envy. That was because they knew that Lin Fan had not only given them a large number of houses to rent out, but he was also Han Tian's boyfriend. Zhang Weiman stretched out his hands and held Lin Fan's right hand tightly. "Mr. Lin, please come in." Lin Fan nodded but did not walk into the office. Instead, he walked straight to Han Tian's side and wrapped his arm around her waist under everyone's gaze. Seeing this, not only was Zhang Weiman not angry, but he was even happier. It was because Han Tian was an employee of Lianjia. This meant that Lin Fan would give even greater support to Lianjia. After a while, Zhang Weiman calmed himself down and invited Lin Fan to the office again. In the spacious meeting room, Lin Fan sat in the main seat while Han Tian sat beside him. Zhang Weiman and the executives sat around the table. Zhang Weiman cleared his throat and said, "Next, let me introduce everyone. This is Mr. Lin Fan, the largest shareholder of Lianjia Real Estate. Welcome." In the conference room, there was a round of applause. Han Tian's delicate body trembled slightly. She looked at Lin Fan with tender eyes. She guessed that the reason why Lin Fan invested in Lianjia Real Estate was because of her. Then, Zhang Weiman explained the current situation of Lianjia and their future plans in detail. Lin Fan was not interested in all of this. However, seeing how serious Han Tian was, he decided to listen patiently. In the blink of an eye, the sun was setting. Under Zhang Weiman's arrangements, Lin Fan, Han Tian, and the other executives all arrived at the Imperial Hotel. This meal was very sumptuous. Lin Fan and Han Tian were undoubtedly the main characters at the table. Chairman Zhang Weiman and the other executives were toasting with them. Everyone had a great time at the banquet. The banquet only came to an end at 9 o'clock in the evening. Lin Fan personally sent Han Tian home. Han Tian felt the warmth coming from beside her. She could not help but think of how Lin Fan had given her a large number of houses to rent out in order to increase her performance. She thought of the bag that Lin Fan had given her. She thought about how Lin Fan had arranged her father's work perfectly. She thought about how he bought a large number of Lianjia's shares for her. Han Tian's entire body seemed to melt from the warmth. She leaned toward Lin Fan. "Oh epsilon. 3 epsilon. Letter 2C9, letter 2C9. 415 mission, become a teacher." The next day, even though she was tired from last night, Han Tian still made lean meat noodles, fried dumplings, and eggs early in the morning. Then she made 2 cups of hot milk. Lin Fan and Han Tian fed each other and kept laughing. It was very sweet. After the meal, Han Tian went to Lianjia's branch office while Lin Fan went to Jiangbei University. At this moment, 2 more bright banners appeared in front of the gate of Jiangbei University. "We warmly congratulate our school's Lin Fan on publishing his thesis on the cover of Nature. Warm congratulations to our school, Lin Fan, for his invention of the super battery." Every once in a while, Jiangbei University would hang a new banner about Lin Fan. Now that there were 2 more, Lin Fan was no longer surprised. After Lin Fan parked the car, he went straight to the classroom. Song Yi, who was sitting at the back, waved his hand and shouted, "Brother Lin Fan, over here." "Brother Lin Fan, did you invent the super battery again?" Zhang Jinbao asked. When the students who were chatting in low voices heard this, they all looked at Lin Fan. Obviously, they were also very curious about this. Lin Fan nodded, "Yeah." Zhang Jinbao immediately raised his thumb and praised, "Brother Lin Fan, you're awesome." All the students also revealed looks of admiration. At this moment the bell rang. The old professor walked in slowly with his textbook. He cleared his throat and began his new lesson. After he spoke, Lin Fan seemed to have heard a lullaby and fell into a deep sleep. Seeing this, the old professor could not help but nod his head repeatedly. Geniuses were indeed made of 99% sweat. Even though he had already obtained so many achievements, Lin Fan probably studied hard again last night. He must not disturb his sleep. Thus, the old professor shut his mouth, turned around, and wrote a few big words on the blackboard: "Quiet self-study, no talking. Violators will be punished with 0 points at the end of the semester." The entire classroom immediately fell silent. There was only a series of loud snores. The crisp bell rang. Lin Fan slowly opened his eyes. There was a little more noise in the classroom. At this moment, Counselor Sun Yaodong walked in. He looked up, and when he saw Lin Fan, his eyes lit up. He smiled and said, "I've always said that I have good taste. Lin Fan has brought glory to our class again. Good, very good." He had brought glory to the class again. Lin Fan rolled his eyes. "Lin Fan, Chancellor Shen Liang wants you to go to his office." "All right," Lin Fan replied. Most students did not know how to get to the Chancellor's office even after many years of studying. However, Lin Fan was very familiar with the place. Chancellor Shen Liang seemed to have been waiting for Lin Fan. When Lin Fan came to the door, he quickly went up to him and said happily, "Lin Fan, you're here, hurry up and sit inside." Then Shen Liang personally poured a cup of fragrant tea for Lin Fan. A dignified chancellor was welcoming him at the door and pouring him tea. One had to admit that he really cared about Lin Fan. Then they chatted and the chancellor showed concern. Lin Fan sat on the soft sofa and drank the tea. He would reply to the chancellor from time to time, but he felt bored. Shen Liang seemed to have noticed that Lin Fan was getting impatient. Thus he cleared his throat and said the reason why he had invited Lin Fan over. "Lin Fan, first of all, on behalf of the school, the country, and the world, please allow me to express my sincere gratitude to you for solving Zhou's conjecture, the twin prime number conjecture, the Hale conjecture, the Hodge conjecture, and other mathematical problems, as well as for your invention of the super battery, the earthquake prediction device, the human islet recovery medicine, the carbon-based photolithographic machine, the super battery, and other products that benefit mankind." After Shen Liang finished speaking, he stood up and bowed deeply toward Lin Fan. His words were extremely sincere without any pretense. Lin Fan said, "This is just a small matter, Chancellor, you don't have to do this." "No," Shen Liang said righteously, "this is what I should do." "Lin Fan, I know you're a very thoughtful person and don't like to be restrained. However, I still want to ask if you can take a few mentors under your wing. Honestly, I feel that it would be a waste if your wisdom can't be passed down. Of course, don't worry, you only need to give them some guidance when you have time. Most of the time, you can hand them over to other associate professors." In reality, Shen Liang had such thoughts since long ago. However, just as he said, he knew that Lin Fan did not like to be restrained. Therefore, he had never mentioned it before. However, Shen Liang recently found out that the Institute of Science really wanted Lin Fan to go over. This gave Shen Liang a sense of urgency. After all, there was no comparison between Jiangbei University and the Institute of Science. What if Lin Fan really went over? The glory that Jiangbei University had enjoyed during this period of time would soon be gone. However, if Lin Fan had some mentors here, then it would be different. Mentor students. The assistant professors would help. Lin Fan was stunned. He was about to speak. At this moment, a clear notification sounded in his mind. "Ding, mission, become a teacher, teach 5 students and let them receive a total of 3 international awards. Reward, 5 golden red packets and a special skill." 5 golden red packets and a special skill. It had been a long time since he received a skill. "All right," Lin Fan replied immediately. "Huh." When Shen Liang heard Lin Fan's reply, he was stunned. He had prepared many excuses. He was even prepared to be rejected by Lin Fan. What was the situation now? Lin Fan immediately agreed. He could hardly believe his ears. Lin Fan saw that Shen Liang did not reply for a long time and could not help but say, "Why can't I?" Shen Liang hurriedly said, "No, no, of course you can." Then Shen Liang said, "Lin Fan, which subject do you want to teach? Computer, chemistry, creatures, or mathematics?" Lin Fan thought for a while and said, "I'll teach them a little of each subject." After all, Lin Fan needed 5 students to receive 3 international awards. Teaching them different subjects would give them a higher chance of winning. Teaching a few students each subject. If it was someone else who said this, they would definitely be spat on. After all, everyone's focus was different. How could the students be taught different subjects? However, Lin Fan was different. He had achieved amazing results in mathematics, chemistry, physics, biology, and computer science. He was a big shot among big shots. He was willing to teach students different disciplines. And Shen Liang could not be happier. How could he object? 416. The selection of professors. Generally speaking, the selection of professors, especially the selection of full professors, required a long review. However, an hour after Lin Fan agreed to take in students, the official website of Jiangbei University announced that Lin Fan had become a full professor. Then there was news that Lin Fan would be teaching students. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Countless people started a heated discussion. Man in the wind, heavens, is God Lin Fan finally going to recruit students? I'm excited. Blind, I'm a student from Huiking University asking how to apply for Master Lin Fan's postgraduate studies. Tang Yangsheng, I'm a student at Capital University. I beg God Lin Fan to take me in. Likes Chaozheng, isn't Lin Fan a professor at Jiangbei University? The students from Huiking University and Capital University are going to study under Lin Fan. Legend of Night Shift, Huiking University, Capital University. Let me ask you, has anyone from Huiking University and Capital University solved several math problems? Has anyone from Huiking University and Capital University invented earthquake prediction devices, carbon-based photo engraving machines, super batteries, and human islet recovery medicines? I can only say that God Lin Fan is awesome. According to Shen Liang's initial plan, he wanted Lin Fan to teach all the students from Jiangbei University. After all, the treasures should be kept within the circle. However, as the news spread on the internet, the leaders of Huiking University, Capital University, and Madu University all made requests to Jiangbei University. Shen Liang could only make a concession. After discussing it with Lin Fan, he posted an email address. Students who wanted to apply to become Lin Fan students should send an email to that address. When Lin Fan arrived at the classroom, Song Yi asked, "Brother Lin Fan, you've become a professor in our school." "Yes," Lin Fan replied casually. When the students in the classroom heard it, they all cast him envious gazes. Lin Fan first solved a few difficult problems and then invented a high-tech product. Now he had even become a professor. They both received 9 years of compulsory education, but why was he so outstanding? Lin Fan said, "I might have less time to come to classes in the future." After all, he was about to become a teacher. He could not completely ignore his students. Otherwise, how could he complete the mission? "Brother Lin Fan, let's have dinner together tonight." "Yes, let's eat together," Ma Zhang also said. Immediately after, all the students in the class followed suit. Lin Fan smiled. "What are you guys doing? It's not like I'm not coming to classes anymore. Even if I don't come, we're still classmates. But of course, it's not a problem to have dinner together tonight. Just take it as a celebration of my becoming a professor. Where do you want to eat?" In the past, all the students liked to go to AC Clubhouse. However, today, they went to a barbecue stall near the school. Eating skewers and drinking beer was a different experience. All the students picked up bottles of beer and toasted Lin Fan. The atmosphere was extremely lively. That night, Lin Fan stayed in his dorm to sleep. While Lin Fan was eating and sleeping, in the female dormitory, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu stared at the form on the screen and looked back and forth several times. They constantly modified and reviewed every word. However, they were still a little worried. At this moment, Zhao Nai, who had just washed her hair, slowly walked over and asked, "What are you two doing?" As she spoke, she leaned her head over. "This is an application form. You guys want to be God Lin Fan students." Zia Bing and Zia Zhu nodded hard. They thought for a moment and said, Can you help me check?" "All right," Zhao Nai replied. After a while she said, "Well written, perfect." Zia Bing and Zia Zhu nodded, but they still did not immediately send the form. Instead, they started checking again from the beginning to the end. They removed spaces, changed tables, added or removed words. After a long time, they put the form into the email. Zia Bing and Zia Zhu moved their mouse and stopped for a long time under the send button. In the end, they finally pressed send. Suddenly, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu's hearts were beating wildly like drums, and their two pretty faces turned red. Then they sat in front of the computer and quietly looked at their empty mailbox. For the next few days, Lin Fan stayed in school. He went to class as usual. After all, just as Lin Fan had said, he might not have as much time to go to class for the next period of time. It was time to experience the life of a student to the best of his ability now. In the blink of an eye, it was the weekend. Last night, Lin Fan returned to Coiling Dragon Villa. Lin Fan had been eating in the canteen for the past few days. Today, his meal was replaced with M5 beef, Japanese eel, duck breast liver roll, matsutake egg tart, caviar cake, and other delicacies from a Michelin 2-star restaurant. After eating his fill, Lin Fan casually swiped his phone. At this moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He slowly walked to the computer and logged into his email. Instantly, tens of thousands of emails appeared on the screen. Among them, there were students from Jiangbei University, Huiking University, and Capital University. There were also many students from foreign universities. Seeing this, Lin Fan could not help but mumble, "Aren't there too many?" Although Lin Fan had the scanning ability and could read these emails in an instant, in the face of thousands of emails, he still felt his scalp go numb. After all, it was very troublesome to click thousands of times with the mouse. After a while, Lin Fan raised the super smart watch on his wrist and called out, "Lil White." "I'm here, master." The super smart watch flickered slightly and let out a crisp sound. "Can you help me sort and select these emails?" Lin Fan said. "Of course, master," Lil White asked. "May I ask what kind of requirements you have for your candidates?" Lin Fan thought for a moment and said, "No foreigners." Instantly, Lin Fan's mailbox lost about a quarter of the emails. Lin Fan continued, "Outstanding talents from the fields of chemistry, computer science, mathematics, physics, and biology. Pick 10 from each field with the most potential." "Yes, master," Lil White said. Soon there were only 50 emails left. Seeing this, Lin Fan picked up his mouse and opened one email after another. He either nodded, shook his head, or pondered. When Lin Fan opened the 10th email, he could not help but mutter. "Nai Junjiang of Huiking University. He also participated in the International Mathematical Modeling Competition with me, right? He's an old acquaintance." As he spoke, he opened the next email. "Zia Bing." Lin Fan looked at the email on the screen and was slightly stunned. He seemed to have thought of something and quickly opened the next email. It was sent by Zia Zhu. Lin Fan could not help but laugh and say, "These two ladies want to be my students. I haven't been spending much time with them. After becoming my students, I can spend more time with them." As Lin Fan spoke, he ticked Zia Bing's and Zia Zhu's names. Then he clicked on the next email. Very quickly, he finished reading all 50 emails. Originally, Lin Fan had planned to choose one person from each field: mathematics, computer science, physics, chemistry, and biology. However, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu were both computer science students. In the end, the number of students Lin Fan chose increased from 5 to 6. To Lin Fan, choosing a student was just a small matter. After replying to 6 emails, he went to sleep quietly. He slept quietly, but many people could not sleep tonight. In the female dormitory of Jiangbei University, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu stared at the mailbox interface whenever they were free. Today was no exception. After dinner, they turned on their laptops and stared at their laptop screens without blinking. Their beautiful faces were filled with anticipation and nervousness. At this moment, the laptops let out a soft sound. They both received an email. In the next moment, Zia Bing's and Zia Zhu's pretty faces were like blooming flowers, extremely brilliant. There were only 4 words in the email: "Congratulations, you've been accepted." Even so, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu read it and forth a dozen times. In the end, the 2 women who had always been docile jumped up happily. In the male dormitory of Capital University, Hao Jiwu, who was wearing black-rimmed glasses and had a kitten on his shoulder, was very focused on playing a game called Pesticide. 3, 2, 1, my big move is ready. 1, 2, 3. Harvest them all. He controlled the hero and wiped out one enemy after another like flowing water. Soon he broke through the enemy's crystal and obtained the final victory. Some people had good grades and were also good at games, which was more infuriating. "We won," Hao Jiwu shouted excitedly. "Hao Jiwu, don't be so agitated, it's just a game." "All right," Hao Jiwu replied casually. At this moment, Hao Zhiwu's phone vibrated slightly and an email popped up. He clicked to check. The next moment, Hao Zhiwu shouted again, "That's great." "Hao Zhiwu, keep your voice down," his roommate complained again. However, this time Hao Zhiwu laughed as if he did not hear anything. "Great, this is great, ha ha ha." This was because there were 4 words in the email: "Congratulations, you've been accepted." He was accepted. He had been recruited by God Lin Fan. The internet was also in an uproar. After Lin Fan had chosen his students, the official website of Jiangbei University also released an announcement. Jiangbei University. After a few days of careful consideration, Lin Fan has selected 6 students. They are Zia Zhu and Zia Bing from Jiangbei University, Nai Zhenjiang from Huqing University, Hao Zhiwu from Capital University, Zhang Keokwen from Mada University, and Liu Kaianqian from Zia Qi University. He looks forward to having them learn under him. In addition, the application channel will be temporarily closed. Soon, a large number of comments came in. Half-Life Snow God Lin Fan has already chosen 6 students. I haven't even sent my email yet. Leng Shang, me too, I was even prepared to send it tomorrow. Awesome, unfortunately, I'm not the one who will accompany God Lin to the end. Stone Golem, commenter above, I nearly vomited. Happy Jiang Keokwen has been selected. F*CK, I should hurry up and hug his thigh, that's my former roommate. Gentle Water, Liu Kaianqian from Zia Qi University. Does she need a younger sister? JK, are they all local students? Are they no US students? Make, there's no one from Eagle Country either. This is unfair. Mr. Huang, what fairness? God Lin Fan is from Hua Nation. He can choose whichever student he wants. Li Jinyi, don't be so quick to speculate. Our Stick Nation has already verified Lin Fan's identity. There's a high possibility that he's one of our Stick Nation people. Entering Stick Nation, I'm willing to call you the most shameless. When a ray of warm sunlight fell on the windowsill, Lin Fan opened his eyes slowly. He first looked at his phone. Notice from Merchant Bank, 7,543,900 yuan was deposited into your account. Then he turned his attention to the check-in system. Check-in. Ding, congratulations, you've obtained Master Chef experience. It's a cooking technique that far exceeds ordinary people's, and at the same time it can display a fascinating charm. Seeing this, Lin Fan's expression changed. Finally, it was not something as useless as 10 million yuan. Master Chef experience. In the past, Lin Fan also wanted to become an outstanding chef. Later, he also tried to cook for himself. However, it could only be said that his cooking would not kill people. After that, he rarely cooked again. Master Chef experience, this seemed to be a good thing. At the same time, Lin Fan's mind was suddenly filled with many exquisite cooking methods. It was as if Lin Fan had just received a new toy. He could not wait to get the fresh food store to send over M9 snowflake beef, Australian lobster, egg noodles, potatoes, lettuce, green peppers, eggs, flatbread, garlic, and other ingredients. Lin Fan brought the ingredients to the kitchen. Lin Fan picked up a potato and gripped the knife handle tightly. A crisp and rhythmic sound immediately rang out. Then, strips of potato that were uniform in size and thickness appeared on the cutting board. After a wave of smoke rose, a rich fragrance wafted out. Then, delicious dishes were served on the table one after another: perfectly seared snowflake steak, fragrant noodles, golden shredded potatoes, homemade tea eggs, and so on. Lin Fan picked up the seafood and put it in his mouth. He nodded and said, "The noodles are chewy and the soup is fragrant. The taste is not bad." One had to know. For the past few months, he had eaten breakfast at a 2-star Michelin restaurant almost every day. Saying the food he cooked was not bad was already high praise. One could imagine how good the taste was. Lin Fan picked up another piece of snowflake steak and chewed it gently. The heat is moderate and the meat melts in the mouth. It maintains the original sweetness of the beef. As he ate, he commented on each dish. After a while, all the food on the table was eaten clean. Lin Fan rubbed his round tummy, a satisfied look on his face. He tasted the delicacies he made. Whether it was his body or his mind, Lin Fan was extremely satisfied. He seemed to be fascinated by his own cooking skills. He chose to cook at home for the entire weekend. He was very content. In the blink of an eye, it was Monday. Today, Lin Fan drove the Cullinan to Jiangbei University under the warm sunlight. When Vice-Chancellor Feng Weijian saw Lin Fan, he smiled and said, "Student Lin Fan, wait, no, you should be called Professor Lin now. Actually, I think I should have called you that a long time ago." "Good morning, Professor Lin." "Good morning, Vice-Chancellor Feng," Lin Fan replied. "I don't think you know where your office is, right?" Feng Weijian continued. "I'll bring you there." "Then I'll have to trouble you, Vice-Chancellor Feng," Lin Fan said. No trouble at all," Feng Weijian laughed. The two of them chatted as they walked, and their footsteps were light. "Professor Lin, what are you going to teach the students?" Feng Weijian asked. "If it involves projects and research, Jiangbei University will do our best to meet your funding requirements." Feng Weijian was not lying. It would be extremely difficult for an ordinary professor to apply for research projects and funding. However, Lin Fan was different. Jiangbei University was not afraid of Lin Fan's application, but they were afraid that he would not apply. Lin Fan said, "I haven't decided yet, let's bring them to win a few international awards first." After all, this was also the reason why he was teaching students. However, Feng Weijian did not take his words to heart. Lin Fan had not even thought of what to research, yet he wanted his students to get a few international awards first. How was this possible? The two of them chatted as they walked. Before long, they arrived at an extremely spacious and clean office. There was a huge mahogany desk and a very soft and comfortable executive chair. In the middle was an antique coffee table and a branded sofa. There were a few smaller mahogany tables and chairs near the door. It did not feel like an office at all, but more like a casual tea house. It was luxurious and stylish. "Professor Lin, are you satisfied with this office?" Feng Weijian asked. "Not bad," Lin Fan said. "As long as you're satisfied," Feng Weijian said happily. At this moment, footsteps sounded from outside the corridor. They were Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, Nai Zhenjiang, Hao Zhiwu, Jiang Keiaquen, and Liu Kaiyanqian. Feng Weijian saw a few people and asked, "How many of you have come? In the future, all of you will study hard under Professor Lin. If you have any questions, you can ask Professor Lin. If Professor Lin doesn't have time, you can also ask the assistant professors." When everyone heard this, they all looked toward Lin Fan. The moment Xia Bing and Xia Zhu saw Lin Fan, their faces turned red. When their eyes met Lin Fan's, they hurriedly lowered their heads, wishing they could bury their heads in the ground. Nai Zhenjiang's expression was a little complicated. Hao Zhiwu, Jiang Keiaquen, and Liu Kaiyanqian looked at Lin Fan with shock and admiration. It was no wonder that they were like this. Lin Fan had never participated in an interview before, nor had he ever exposed any photos of himself on the internet. They only heard that he was very young. However, they never thought that he would be so young. In fact, he even seemed a little younger than them. "Well then, get along well with your professor, I'll be leaving first," Feng Weijian said. After saying that, he walked straight into the distance. Lin Fan cleared his throat and said, "Let's introduce ourselves. Hello, everyone, my name is Hao Zhiwu, I'm from the School of Biological Engineering at Capital University. I love animals and playing games. Those who have a hobby in this area can look for me anytime." Hao Zhiwu was the first to introduce himself. As he spoke, he danced. Obviously, he was an extrovert. Soon he left an impression in everyone's hearts. "Hello, everyone, my name is Jiang Keiaquen, I'm from the School of Chemistry at Madu University. Reading," Jiang Keiaquen said. He had a rather dull personality and spoke very little. "Hello, everyone, my name is Liu Kaiyanqian, I'm from the Physics Department of Xia Qi University," Liu Kaiyanqian said concisely. "Hello, everyone," Nai Zhenjiang said. "My name is Nai Zhenjiang, I'm from Huiqing University's Math Department, I like to play basketball." "Hello, everyone, my name is Xia Bing, I'm from Jiangbei University's Department of Computer Science," Xia Bing said. "Hello, everyone, my name is Xia Zhu, I'm from Jiangbei University's Department of Computer Science," Xia Zhu said. After that, they seemed to have used up all their strength and could not stop panting. Lin Fan gently patted Xia Bing's and Xia Zhu's shoulders with a smile. Don't be nervous. Xia Bing's and Xia Zhu's already blushing faces were like ripe tomatoes at this moment. Then, they nodded hard. Lin Fan said, let's go in and sit down. After the six of them sat down, Lin Fan said, let me talk about my short-term goal. I want you to win a few international awards first. When Hao Jiwu and the others heard this, they looked at each other in dismay. Was it that easy to get an international award? Lin Fan did not care much about it and asked, Hao Jiwu, what are you best at researching? Biopharmaceutics, Hao Jiwu said, more specifically the kidney. I've always thought that the kidney is the source of strength. Only when the kidney is good can the body be good. However, Lin Fan did not wait for him to finish and interrupted, all right, I got it. After saying that, he took out a pen and paper and quickly wrote down a list of problems. Try to solve these problems. Hao Jiwu was slightly surprised by Lin Fan's master-level handwriting. Then, he looked at the problems carefully. He frowned and pondered. All right, Professor Lin. Jiang Keokwan, which direction are you best at? Lin Fan asked. Polymolecular coding, Jiang Keokwan said. When he said this, Jiang Keokwan was actually a little nervous. That was because Lin Fan's achievements did not involve the study of polymolecular coding. It was also because of this that Jiang Keokwan hesitated to come to Jiangbei University after he was selected. Lin Fan did not think too much about it. He picked up a pen and paper and wrote down some problems. Try to answer these problems, Lin Fan said. Jiang Keokwan looked at the paper and read the problems. Other than surprise, his face was filled with joy. Lin Fan knew about polymolecular coding. His choice was not wrong. All right, Professor Lin, Jiang Keokwan said. Lin Fan did not care about what Jiang Keokwan was thinking. He slowly came in front of Xia Bing and Xia Zhu and turned on the laptop in front of them. Lin Fan's hands seemed to be flying as they jumped rapidly on the keyboard. At the same time, countless complicated codes appeared on the computer screen. A moment later, Lin Fan stopped and said, try to break it. Lin Fan had professor-level computer science experience. At the same time, he also had professional hacking skills. Writing a relatively complicated program was nothing. Xia Bing and Xia Zhu felt the warm aura from Lin Fan's body, and their faces turned red. After a while they stuttered, okay, all right. Then Lin Fan looked at Liu Kaianqian and asked, what kind of research are you good at? Liu Kaianqian thought for a moment and said, electromagnetism. Lin Fan nodded. He picked up a pen and paper and quickly wrote down a few problems. I'll try to answer them. In the end, Lin Fan's gaze landed on Nai Junjiang. What are you good at? The Navier-Stokes equation, Nai Junjiang said. When Jiang Keokwan, Liu Kaianqian, Hao Jiwu and the others heard this, they all looked at him in surprise. Even though they did not major in mathematics, they also knew that the Navier-Stokes equation was one of the Millennium Prize problems. No one had been able to solve it for hundreds of years. Nai Junjiang was good at the Navier-Stokes equations. Not bad, Junjiang, Hao Jiwu said directly. You're actually studying one of the Millennium Prize problems. Which step are you at now? Nai Junjiang blushed. Which step had his research reached? He was just an ordinary university student. How far could he go? He had just gotten started. Lin Fan did not care about it and wrote down equations and problems. Nai Junjiang looked at Lin Fan's elegant handwriting and complicated calculations. He was in a daze. At this moment, he suddenly remembered the scene of Lin Fan participating in the mathematical modeling competition with him. At that time, Nai Junjiang was determined to win the Higher Education Cup. In the end, it was given to Lin Fan. Regarding this, Nai Junjiang had been brooding over this. He felt that it was all because Lin Fan had solved Zhou's conjecture. That was why the judges gave the Higher Education Cup to Lin Fan. Now it seemed that he was really too narrow-minded. Lin Fan saw that Nai Junjiang was in a daze and not saying anything. He could not help but ask, don't you understand, should I change the topics to something simpler? Nai Junjiang's face became redder and redder. He hurriedly said, no need, no need. Lin Fan nodded his head. All right, then try to think of the answers. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. Everyone responded. It had to be said that these people were indeed talents from famous universities. They all had extremely strong self-control. Not long after, they moved a large pile of books from the library and quickly flipped through them. They kept taking notes and making calculations. Suddenly, the sound of books being flipped and the crisp sound of pen tips colliding with the table could be heard in the office. An ordinary person could focus on studying for half an hour or an hour. However, these people maintained an extremely focused learning attitude almost all day long, other than when they had to take their meals and visit the toilet. The originally empty draft books were now filled with countless complicated patterns and calculations. This state lasted for 3 days. When everyone was tired and ready to go home, Hao Jiwu suddenly said, "Professor Lin, can I bring Lil White here?" Lil White, Lin Fan asked curiously. As soon as he finished speaking, the super smart watch on his wrist flashed slightly. However, it did not respond. It was because it knew that there were many other people here. "It's my cat. I've been keeping it in the dormitory for the past few days, so it's a little bored." "Of course, this isn't the main reason," he explained further. "The main reason is that when I'm with Lil White, my learning efficiency will increase by a lot." Bringing a cat to Lin Fan's office. In the past few days, Hao Jiwu, Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, Nai Zhenjiang, Liu Kaiyanqian, and Zhang Keiaquen had been reading and studying. Lin Fan spent every day in his chair playing with his phone and laptop. He occasionally looked out the window. He was really bored. If there was a cat in the office, it would be nice to pet it. Thus Lin Fan nodded. "All right, bring it over then." "All right," Hao Jiwu said happily. The next day, Nai Zhenjiang, Liu Kaiyanqian, Zhang Keiaquen, Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, Hao Jiwu, and the others all arrived at the office on time. On Hao Jiwu's shoulder was a white cat. "Is this Lil White?" Liu Kaiyanqian asked. "It's so white and chubby, how cute. It's actually still lying on your shoulder without moving at all, how obedient." After 3 days of getting along, the few of them were basically familiar with each other and would occasionally chat. "Of course," Hao Jiwu said proudly. "My Lil White likes to lie on my shoulder. If I don't carry it down, it can continue to lie on my shoulder." "It's that obedient?" Liu Kaiyanqian asked in surprise. "Can I hold it?" "I'm afraid that won't do," Hao Jiwu said apologetically. "My Lil White is very attached to me. It only wants to be hugged by me." At this moment, Lin Fan walked in slowly. Hao Jiwu, Su Kaiyanqian, Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, and the others quickly greeted. "Hello, Professor Lin." Lin Fan nodded and said, "Hello." As they spoke, the cat also let out 2 clear meows. To Hao Jiwu, Liu Kaiyanqian, and the others, the cat's meows were crisp and pleasant. When Lin Fan heard the cat's meows, a strange look appeared on his face. It was because Lin Fan had the skill animal communication. He could understand the language of all animals and communicate with them. The little cat asked, "The poop shoveler has been here these few days. It doesn't look like there's anything delicious here. Then why have I been making a scene at home these past few days?" Lin Fan smiled and opened a bag of premium beef cat food that he had spent 1,000 yuan on last night at the supermarket. He said, "Lil White, I have delicious food here. Come over quickly." The cat did not hesitate at all. It jumped down from Hao Jiwu's shoulder and walked toward Lin Fan. Seeing this, Liu Kaiyanqian, Zhang Keiaquen, and the others all looked at Hao Jiwu. They looked as if they were asking him, "Didn't you say that it'll refuse to come down from your shoulder?" At this moment, the cat had already arrived in front of Lin Fan. It was eating the top-grade beef cat food in Lin Fan's hands, and its mouth could not help but let out a series of gurgling sounds. "It's so delicious. I've never eaten such delicious food before. It's so delicious." Lin Fan smiled. "Come, let me hug you. I have a lot of good food here." The cat did not hesitate at all and jumped into Lin Fan's arms. It made a series of purring sounds to please him. "Master, can you be my new master?" Seeing this, Liu Kaiyanqian, Zhang Keiaquen, and the others looked at Hao Jiwu again. It was as if they were saying, "Is this what you meant by it's only attached to you?" 420 Answer, work hard. Hao Jiwu opened his mouth but did not know what to say. In the past, as long as he waved at Lil White, it would come over very quickly. However, this time, Hao Jiwu's hand was about to break, but Lil White was still by Lin Fan's feet. It kept rubbing against Lin Fan's feet and making sounds to please him. Hao Jiwu was a little helpless. He walked in front of Lin Fan and said, "Lil White, Professor Lin has a lot of important things to deal with, don't disturb him." As he spoke, Hao Jiwu reached out to carry the cat. However, Lil White's body swayed and it dodged to the side. Then it jumped into Lin Fan's arms. Seeing this, Liu Kaianqian, Jiang Keiaquen and the others revealed a strange look again. It was as if they were saying, "Is this what you mean by very clingy?" Hao Jiwu's face was filled with embarrassment. After a while he asked, "Professor Lin, where did you buy the cat food?" Obviously, he also realized that his cat liked this cat food very much. That was why he turned a blind eye to his summoning. "I bought it from Premium Supermarket," Lin Fan said. Hao Jiwu's eyebrows twitched slightly. He had only been in Jiangbei for a few days. However, he had also heard of the name Premium Supermarket. It was synonymous with Jiangbei's luxury and fresh food. How much is this bag of cat food?" Hao Jiwu asked carefully. "I think it only costs a little over 1,000 yuan, Lin Fan said. It only cost a little over 1,000 yuan. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. One had to know. The bag of cat food in Lin Fan's hand was only the size of a palm. It was so small. Yet it cost more than 1,000 yuan. Was there gold in this bag of cat food? Originally, Hao Jiwu was still thinking about giving Lil White this cat food every day when he got back. In this way, Lil White would only stick to him in the future. At this moment, he completely threw this thought to the back of his mind. Eating this kind of cat food every day. It would be a big loss. Hao Jiwu looked at Lil White, who was lying in Lin Fan's arms and purring. In the end, he could only turn around. Thus Hao Jiwu, Nai Zhenjiang, Liu Kaianqian, Jiang Keiaquen, Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, and the others began today's study time again. The tips of the pens collided with the tables, making crisp sounds again. Maybe. Just as Hao Jiwu had said when he was with Lil White, his learning efficiency increased. 2 hours later, Hao Jiwu came to Lin Fan excitedly with a large stack of draft paper. "Professor Lin, look, how did I answer this problem?" Nai Zhenjiang, Liu Kaianqian, Jiang Keiaquen, Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, and the others all felt their hearts tight. Lin Fan had given everyone some problems. However, these problems were all very complicated. Many of them had just begun to think. In the end, Hao Jiwu answered one of them so quickly. Lin Fan took the draft paper from Hao Jiwu and flipped through it quickly. "Professor Lin, the questions you set are really good," Hao Jiwu said. "The kidney is the biggest treasure trove of the human body. Once it's infected, the patient will be sluggish. Through your questions and my answers, we can make large progress in this field of study. Professor Lin, your understanding of the kidney is simply the essence. This treasure trove must be." At this moment, Lin Fan interrupted. "According to your explanation, the kidney that's originally exhausted will soon become swollen." "What edema?" Hao Jiwu was stunned for a moment. Lin Fan said, "Think again." Hao Jiwu frowned. After a long while he finally understood. He hurriedly turned around and sat down, then he picked up his pen and wrote quickly. This time, Hao Jiwu did not even raise his head. After an hour, he took a stack of draft papers and came to Lin Fan. Lin Fan nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad this time." Hao Jiwu's face lit up when he heard that. He said proudly, "Professor Lin, didn't I say that I'd be much more efficient with Lil White?" It had to be said that Hao Jiwu's mentality was really good. Or rather, the more he was defeated, the braver he became. He directly threw his previous mistake to the back of his mind. As for what it meant to be more efficient by being around Lil White, it was all nonsense. In fact, after 3 days of research, Hao Jiwu had almost finished one of the problems yesterday. It was just that he encountered some problems along the way. However, he could have made the changes in time. While Hao Jiwu was talking, a round white cat was lying beside Lin Fan and purring. Hao Jiwu's expression immediately froze. "Great. Pretend he did not say anything." This cat had nothing to do with his learning efficiency. Nai Junjiang, Liu Kaiyan, Jiang Keiaquan, Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, and the others who were also sitting in the office all cast envious gazes at Hao Jiwu. He had answered one of the problems. Hao Jiwu was the first to answer one of Lin Fan's problems. However, the crowd was not depressed because they were lagging behind. On the contrary, they gripped their pens and paper tightly. They were filled with fighting spirit as they solved the difficult problems in front of them. Especially Zia Bing and Zia Zhu. Their two quiet little faces seemed to have a phrase written on them: competition is the greatest motivation for mankind to move forward. A few days ago, everyone would choose to rest for an hour after lunch. However, this afternoon, Nai Junjiang, Liu Kaiyan, Jiang Keiaquan, Zia Bing, and Zia Zhu did not take a break. After Zia Bing and Zia Zhu bought 2 pieces of bread from the small supermarket nearby, they continued to crack the program while eating the bread. In their hearts, they were telling themselves that they had already lost to one person in front of Lin Fan. They definitely could not lose to a second person. Absolutely not. Zia Bing and Zia Zhu's beautiful eyes stared at the screen full of complicated codes without blinking. Their 2 jade-like hands jumped on the keyboard like phantoms. At this moment, the laptops in front of them let out a soft sound. Immediately after, a line of words appeared on the screens. Right at this moment. Professor Lin, what do you think of my answer to this question? Jiang Keiaquan stood up and asked. Lin Fan did not answer him immediately. Instead, he looked at Zia Bing's and Zia Zhu's screens as he said, Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, you two did well. This program has a total of 3 stages. Passing one stage means that you've solved a difficult problem. When Zia Bing and Zia Zhu heard this, it was as if they had heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Their beautiful faces were immediately like blooming flowers, extremely brilliant. 421 Take a shower in the morning, take care of your body. Lin Fan nodded at Zia Bing and Zia Zhu. Then he took a stack of draft papers from Jiang Keiaquan. Lin Fan flipped through it quickly. In just a few seconds he came to a conclusion. You solved this problem well, continue to work hard. Although it was just a simple compliment, it made Jiang Keiaquan extremely happy. He said, Yes, Professor Lin. Seeing this, Liu Kaiyan's and Nai Junjiang's hearts tightened. More people had solved the first problem. They were behind. At the thought of this, they began to work on solving the problems even more seriously. Zia Bing and Zia Zhu doubled their efforts. They were not the ones who were the first to solve the first problem. They absolutely had to snatch that title back for the second problem. Everyone was competing with each other, and the atmosphere was extremely tense. When school was about to end, Liu Kaiyan came to Lin Fan with a stack of draft books and said, Professor Lin, these are the steps to answer the first problem. Lin Fan flipped through it and nodded, Good answer. Liu Kaiyan heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, she managed to solve a problem. She was not too far behind. She heaved a sigh of relief, but Nai Junjiang was extremely nervous and flustered. Everyone else had solved the first problem, and he was in last place. At this moment, a crisp bell rang across Jiangbei University. Lin Fan said, Today's class will end here, everyone go back and rest. After saying that, Lin Fan strode out. Jiang Keiaquan and the others stretched their bodies, packed their books, and prepared to leave the office. When they saw Nai Junjiang's listless look, they immediately realized something. They comforted him, saying, Junjiang, you're studying the Navier-Stokes equation. It's normal for you to have difficulty solving it. After you go back, have a good sleep. Perhaps you'll have a sudden stroke of inspiration and be able to solve it very soon. Take it slowly, don't be anxious. Nai Junjiang's face turned red again at the mention of this matter. The Navier-Stokes equation. A few days ago, he said that this was something he was good at. In the end, he had yet to solve the first problem. All right, Nai Junjiang said in a muffled voice. After he returned to the dormitory, he did not have a good sleep. Instead, he turned on the lights and studied the problem carefully, calculating for an entire night. He was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks, but there was still not much progress. In order to prevent him from being listless in the office, Nai Junjiang took a cold shower early in the morning. At this moment, Hao Jiwu, who stayed in the dormitory next door, walked over with a cat on his shoulder. He looked at Nai Junjiang, who was still a little wet, and said thoughtfully, "Junjiang, you took a shower so early in the morning." "Yes," Nai Junjiang nodded. "Have you washed the clothes?" Hao Jiwu asked again. Nai Junjiang said not yet. Hao Jiwu could not help but take a step back and say earnestly, "The kidney is the treasure trove of humans and the pillar of a man's life. Junjiang, you have to protect it well." After saying that, he even patted his shoulder gently, looking like he was taking care of him. Nai Junjiang was baffled. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and spat out the words, "This guy." Although Nai Junjiang had taken a cold shower in the morning, he was still in a bad state of mind after not sleeping for the entire night. He sat down in the office and felt drowsy. At this moment, Lin Fan walked in with light steps. The cat, who was lying lazily on Hao Jiwu's shoulder with half-closed eyes, immediately opened its eyes and let out two crisp meows. "Master is here. Master, did you bring delicious food?" The cat jumped down from Hao Jiwu's shoulder and came to Lin Fan's feet, rubbing against him. Lin Fan smiled, "Don't worry, the food will be here soon." As if to verify Lin Fan's words, a delivery man walked over with a box and asked, "Is Mr. Lin here?" "Yes, it's me," Lin Fan said. "Please sign here," the courier said. After signing his name, Lin Fan opened the box. It was filled with yesterday's premium cat food. Seeing this, Hao Jiwu's eyes widened. The reason why he brought the cat, Lil White, over today was because he was a little worried. On the one hand, it was because Lil White was constantly making trouble in the dormitory. On the other hand, after Lil White ate Lin Fan's premium beef cat food yesterday, it stopped eating cheap cat food that costs tens of yuan. This made Hao Jiwu furious. He had no choice but to bring Lil White here today to try his luck. What if Lin Fan brought premium beef cat food again? That way, would Lil White not be able to eat a little more? However, what was the situation in front of him? The box was half the height of a person. Yesterday, Hao Jiwu went online to search for the price of this cat food. It was 1,589 yuan per 150 grams. In other words, each gram cost 10 yuan on average. Even he could not afford to eat such expensive food, let alone to feed his cat. How much did the box in front of him cost? 50,000. 100,000. Hao Jiwu felt his knees go weak and almost fell to his knees. Lin Fan did not care that much. He casually tore open a bag of premium beef cat food. The cat, Lil White, began to munch on the food happily. "It's so delicious. The new master is amazing." Lin Fan smiled, "If you like it, then eat more." Then Hao Jiwu, Liu Kaianqian, Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, and the others began to study hard today. Although Nai Junjiang was eager to answer the first question and catch up with the others, he still had a lot of questions to answer. However, he did not sleep last night and was in a terrible state. He seemed extremely tired. Lin Fan seemed to have noticed this as well. After stroking Lil White for a while, he took out a box of spirit tea and said, "If you feel sleepy, you can make some tea for yourself." Nai Junjiang was too sleepy, so he had to put down his studies and get up to make tea. When the boiling water was poured into the teapot with a few tea leaves, a rich tea fragrance instantly spread. Nai Junjiang, who was originally extremely tired, felt refreshed as if a breeze had brushed past him. Almost reflexively, he drank a large glass. Instantly, it was as if he had a pair of wings, letting him soar wantonly under the blue sky. All the tiredness from before was swept away. And what replaced it was extreme relaxation and comfort. After a while he came back to his senses. Nai Junjiang stared at the cup of tea in front of him with a shocked expression. When he raised his head and saw Lin Fan, he remembered what he was here for. He was still in the office and had problems to solve. Therefore, he quickly suppressed the surprise in his heart, turned around, and returned to the table to think about the problems again. 422 Delicious game. Yesterday. A few minutes ago, Nai Junjiang was still at a loss on the first problem. At this moment, he had just sat down when a very clear train of thought appeared in his mind. Then Nai Junjiang picked up a pen and paper and started writing quickly. The entire office was filled with the sound of the pen hitting the table. In just over half an hour, pages of extremely complicated calculations were all written on the paper. Nai Junjiang walked up to Lin Fan nervously and said, "Professor Lin, do you think this is the solution to this problem?" Lin Fan quickly scanned the paper. After a few seconds he said, "Not bad, the solution is correct." "Okay," Nai Junjiang said excitedly. When Jiang Kayakwen heard this, he could not help but raise his head and say, "Junjiang, well done, you've solved the Navier-Stokes equation." "Thank you," Nai Junjiang said with a smile. At this moment, Hao Zhu also raised his head. Just as he was about to say something, he sniffed and said, "What's that smell? It feels so refreshing." Nai Junjiang said, "You should be smelling the fragrance of this tea. It's very delicious. It's because I drank it that I was able to answer the first problem so quickly. You guys can come and drink it too." Liu Kaianqian, Xia Bing, and Xia Zhu, who were still trying to solve the second difficult question, could not help but raise their heads and look at the tea that Nai Junjiang was pointing at. After all, this involved solving a difficult problem. Hao Zhiwu was the first to come to the coffee table. He picked up a cup of spirit tea and poured it into his mouth. In the next moment, Hao Zhiwu felt as if his clothes had been torn to shreds. It was as if he had transformed into the legendary first human Adam. He was naked and had a strong jumping ability. In the dense forest, he ran and jumped freely against the breeze. It was so refreshing and pleasant. "This tea is really delicious," Hao Zhiwu could not help but praise. When Jiang Kayakwen, Liu Kaianqian, Xia Bing, and Xia Zhu heard this, they also walked over and poured a cup of tea into their mouths. In the next moment, everyone's faces revealed a touch of unconcealable comfort and enjoyment. "So refreshing. I feel much more relaxed." Everyone could not help but praise. When they returned to their seats, their minds were much clearer than before. Facing the second problem, they had some ideas. At this moment, they finally understood why Nai Junjiang had said that he could answer the first problem so quickly because he drank the tea. This tea was simply too magical. They were all immersed in learning. However, sometimes a clear mind was not enough to answer difficult questions. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon, but no one had solved the second problem. Yesterday and this morning, Lin Fan had been playing with the cat. However, as time passed, it gradually became boring. After browsing the news on his tablet for a while, he opened the group chat that he had not sent a message in for a long time. "Work Slayer, let's play a few rounds of games." Dream type, yes, the worker is a godly tycoon. Anti coming. Old rate, I'll be there soon. Meowgod logging into my account. Hao Zhiwu, who had been reading books and answering difficult problems for a long time, stood up and stretched. He looked at his cat, Lil White, who was lying beside Lin Fan. He walked over and prepared to pet it. He had just petted it a few times when he heard the familiar sound of pesticide. He looked at Lin Fan, who was holding his tablet, and said in surprise, "Professor Lin, you like to play pesticide too?" "Haha, I like to play it too. I like to play mage, archer, and jungler. Actually, I used to like the support the most, but I often encounter some idiots who occupy the output position. The support can't save the world at all." Hao Zhiwu was an extrovert. In addition, he had been spending time with Lin Fan for the past few days and felt a sense of familiarity. When the game was brought up, he began talking non-stop. Hao Zhiwu said after a pause, "Actually, a large part of the reason why I chose bioengineering was that I wanted to study more about the human body. In the future, I want to think of a way to create a piece of equipment that allows one to enter games with their consciousness. Just like in Sword Art Online, where you can pick up your own weapons and kill monsters." As Hao Zhiwu said this, his eyes flickered. It was as if he already had this kind of game equipment and was wantonly adventuring in the game. At this moment, Lin Fan, who had been playing games silently, suddenly stopped what he was doing. This was because a crisp notification sounded in his mind. "Ding, mission, watch a biology experiment and a computer experiment." Read nervous system research from neuron to brain, the constitution of neuron, nervous transmission, animation, mathematical methods in 3D games and computer images and game program patterns. Reward, computer and biology experience increases by 1 level, gaming helmet and its working principles. Hao Jiwu saw that Lin Fan was not playing the game and that his character was about to be killed. He was even more agitated than Lin Fan, who was the one playing games. Professor Lin, why aren't you moving? Move, you're about to be beaten to death. When Lin Fan heard this voice, he came back to his senses. However, he did not play the game. Instead, he handed the tablet to Hao Jiwu and said, "You play." Then he said to the others, "Study on your own. If you encounter any questions that you don't understand, put them aside for now. Ask me again when I come back." After Lin Fan finished speaking, he walked out. Hao Jiwu took Lin Fan's tablet and started playing the game. He spent a long time to avoid his character dying. "You want to kill me, you're still a little inexperienced." Hao Jiwu could not help but nod and praise. When he saw the IDs of his teammates, his eyes widened as he shouted, "Dream type, Ant, old rate, Meow God." Oh my god! Dream type, Ant, old rate, and Meow God were the most popular players in Pesticide. In the end, these people were actually ranked together with Lin Fan. This. Hao Jiwu could not help but look at Lin Fan, who had disappeared from the door. "Professor Lin, you're awesome." Hao Jiwu had always had a dream. That was to game with one of the top players, Dream Type, Ant, Old Rate, and Meow God. However, Lin Fan had all 4 of them on his team. How amazing was this? After a while, Hao Jiwu looked away and focused on the tablet again. He continued playing the game excitedly. During this time, he did not forget to take out his phone and record a few videos of himself and the game as a memento. Lin Fan did not care about Hao Jiwu's actions at all. At this moment, he had already arrived at the entrance of teaching building number 1. The reason why Lin Fan was so eager to complete the mission was that he was in a hurry. On the one hand, this mission could increase his computer science experience level. On the other hand, he was also very interested in the gaming helmet that Hao Jiwu mentioned. As long as one put on the helmet, one could enter the game world. How fun would that be? At this moment, a bald man in a white shirt walked over. When he saw Lin Fan, his silver-rimmed glasses flashed as he quickly walked over. "Hello, Professor Lin," the bald man said happily. "I'm Qiu Zhengsheng, a professor at the School of Computer Science." Lin Fan's name had long since spread throughout Jiangbei University. Qiu Zhengsheng naturally recognized him. "Oh, it's Professor Qiu," Lin Fan said. "Hello." Lin Fan greeted him. The smile on Qiu Zhengsheng's face widened as he continued, "Professor Lin, Professor Liu Wei and I have brought a few graduate students to carry out a sensory device experiment. Are you interested in taking a look?" After he said this, a look of anticipation appeared on his face. A long time ago, there was a saying circulating among the teachers of Jiangbei University. If one wanted to make a breakthrough in their research, get Lin Fan to be interested. Initially, Qiu Zhengsheng did not pay much attention to such words. However, not long ago, Wang Jun and Chen Heiyang, who were professors at the School of Computer Science, had piqued Lin Fan's interest in their experiments. From there, he invented the carbon-based photolithographic machine and published a thesis on science. This matter made all the professors in the computer science department extremely jealous. One had to know. Wang Jun and Chen Heiyang were now often interviewed and reported about by various media outlets. They had become big names in the field of computer chips. In addition, Jiangbei University had also increased its investment in all its projects. It could be said that Wang Jun and Chen Heiyang were rich and famous now. How could they not be jealous? All of this was because of Lin Fan. When Lin Fan heard Qiu Zhengsheng's words, his heart skipped a beat. An experiment on a sensory device. Could this be considered related to his gaming helmet? Even if there was no connection, as long as he watched the experiment, it would be enough. Thinking of this, Lin Fan nodded. "All right, let's go take a look." He agreed. Lin Fan agreed. The joy in Qiu Zhengsheng's heart grew even stronger. He hurriedly said, "Professor Lin, this way please." Under Qiu Zhengsheng's lead, the two of them walked to the second floor. Just as they left, Wang Jun happened to walk over. Wang Jun happened to see the backs of Lin Fan and Qiu Zhengsheng going upstairs. He muttered, "Did Qiu Zhengsheng recruit another new student?" Obviously, Wang Jun did not recognize Lin Fan. Laboratory 203. The two graduate students' fingers quickly jumped on the keyboard. The other two graduate students were adjusting the various circuits of the welding. Professor Liu Wei, whose hair was slightly white, stared at the computer screen and was deep in thought. At this moment, the laboratory door was pushed open. Qiu Zhengsheng said excitedly, "Everyone, stop what you are doing for a while." When everyone heard this, they could not help but turn around and look over. The graduate students were still confused. Liu Wei's expression changed suddenly and he said excitedly, "Are you Professor Lin?" One had to know. Liu Wei was probably over 50 years old. Even Lin Fan was not used to being addressed so respectfully by someone in his 50s. Lin Fan coughed lightly and said, "I am Lin Fan, but you don't have to be so polite." After getting Lin Fan's approval, Liu Wei did not treat him as he was supposed to. On the contrary, he became even more excited and respectful. He took 2 steps forward and grabbed Lin Fan's right hand. "Professor Lin, thank you for your invention of the carbon-based photolithographic machine. You've saved Hua Nation from being suppressed by others." Liu Wei's tone was very sincere. This was definitely from the bottom of his heart. He had been in Hua Nation's computer industry for more than 10 years, and he knew very well how important chips were to the country. Now the problem had been resolved. When Liu Wei learned that someone in Hua Nation had invented the carbon-based photolithographic machine, he was so happy that he almost cried. Now he had seen the inventor of the carbon-based photolithographic machine with his own eyes. How could he not be excited? Compared to Liu Wei's excitement, the faces of the 4 graduate students were slowly filled with admiration. Lin Fan could be said to be a godlike existence in Hua Nation's computer science circle, especially in Jiangbei University's computer science department. Lin Fan rubbed his nose and looked at Liu Wei's employee badge. "Professor Liu, I heard from Professor Qiu that you're researching a sensory device." "We started researching it last year," Liu Wei said truthfully. "At that time we were actually hesitant. After all, even if the research was successful, we'd need a chip with excellent performance to operate it. But there's no need to worry now. It's all because of the carbon-based chip that you invented, Professor Lin." At this point, Liu Wei's emotions, which had just calmed down, became excited again. Lin Fan said, "I'm not sure about that. Can I take a look at your experiment?" Liu Wei did not hesitate at all and said directly, "Of course." Lin Fan was now a godlike existence in the computer circle. To be able to do experiments in front of him was something that he could not be happier about. How could he reject Lin Fan's request? "Let's do an experiment on the latest research. I'll do it myself," Qiu Zhengsheng said. "I'll do the data," Liu Wei said. The 2 professors took action personally. It was obvious that they placed great importance on this experiment. They wanted to show Lin Fan the most perfect side of the experiment. The strange-looking machine let out a low sound. On the computer screen, many complicated patterns, codes, and data gradually appeared. Although Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei were older and their movements were a little slow, their operations were stable. 424 Guidance, living in the library. Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei did all the steps of the experiment in a stable manner. Normally, the experiment would normally take half an hour to complete, but it took an hour before it gradually came to an end. "Professor Lin, what do you think needs to be improved?" Liu Wei asked. Qiu Zhengsheng and the graduate students all looked at Lin Fan with anticipation. They had been working on the body sensing equipment for more than a year. However, they encountered many difficulties. They were all looking forward to Lin Fan, who was like a god, being able to provide them with some help. However, Lin Fan did not answer them immediately. Instead, he placed his attention on the system mission. Mission: watch a biology experiment 01 and a computer experiment 11. Read nervous system research from neuron to brain, the constitution of neuron, nervous transmission, animation, mathematical methods in 3D games and computer images and game program patterns. Reward: computer and biology experience increases by 1 level, gaming helmet and its working principles. He had completed one of the requirements. After a while, Lin Fan retracted his attention and said, "Your experiment has inspired me. I'll go back and organize my thoughts first." Without waiting for Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei to speak, he turned around and walked out. Then he went straight to teaching building number 2. Most of the laboratories in the biology department were located here. Lin Fan had been here once. With his photographic memory, he was familiar with the entire building. He came to the laboratory door on the 3rd floor and pushed it open. Professor Zheng Kaiyan, Professor Wu, and a few other graduate students were studying something. After a long period of research, Zheng Kaiyan's mouth was a little dry. She got up and was about to get some water to drink. The next moment Zheng Kaiyan was stunned. She said in surprise, Professor Lin, when did you arrive?" As soon as she said this, Wu Tian, who was originally doing experiments seriously, and a few graduate students all stopped what they were doing and looked toward the door. When they saw that it was Lin Fan, Wu Tian hurriedly went up to him. He bowed slightly and said excitedly, "Professor Lin, the recovery drug you invented is amazing. Even though we've studied the paper repeatedly, we still find many parts of it amazing." The more Wu Tian spoke, the more excited he became. His old face, which had experienced some vicissitudes of life, became extremely red. Wu Tian continued, "In fact, even following the steps in the thesis, some experiments are still difficult for us to complete. Mr. Lin, can you give us some guidance?" At this point, Wu Tian's face was filled with anticipation. After Lin Fan published the paper Principles of the Human Islet Recovery Drug, Wu Tian and Zheng Kaiyan became famous in the biology world. However, they did not become arrogant because of this. On the contrary, Wu Tian and Zheng Kaiyan spent a lot of time researching the drug. In the outside world, many people thought that Wu Tian and Zheng Kaiyan had done a lot of research on the drug. However, in fact, the knowledge they had was not much different from that of the biologists who studied glucose. This meant that even if they spent a lot of time, their progress might not be much faster than those biologists. When Lin Fan heard Wu Tian's words, his gaze changed. Guide an experiment. It should be considered as watching a biology experiment, right? Thinking of this, Lin Fan said, "Okay, but my time is limited. I'll guide you in an experiment." "Thank you, Professor Lin," Wu Tian said happily. The last time Lin Fan completed the system mission, he directly obtained the manufacturing principle of the drug. As for the various experiments involved, he naturally understood them very well. With Lin Fan's help, a complete biology experiment was completed in just 40 minutes. "So that's how it is," Wu Tian said in realization. "No wonder we couldn't succeed before." Zheng Kaiyan and the other graduate students had a look of reminiscence on their faces. Lin Fan did not bother about it and focused on the system mission. Mission: watch a biological experiment 1-1 and a computer experiment 1-1. Read nervous system research from neuron to brain, the constitution of neuron, nervous transmission, animation, mathematical methods in 3D games and computer images and game program patterns. Reward: computer and biology experience increases by 1 level, gaming helmet and its working principles. Seeing this, Lin Fan's lips curled up. As expected, even if he was just guiding the experiment, he could still complete the task. "Professor Lin, thank you for your guidance." Zheng Kaiyan and a few other graduate students followed. "Professor Lin, thank you for your guidance." Lin Fan waved his hand. "It's just a small matter, you guys can continue your research, I'll take my leave first." After saying that, he turned around and left. Then Lin Fan strode into the library. After all, he only needed to read a few more books and he would soon be able to get a gaming helmet. At this moment, a clear voice rang out not far away. "You're here." Lin Fan looked in the direction of the voice. It was Lu Ling. Today, Lu Ling was wearing a long blue dress. Her quiet face, snow-white skin, and the books in her arms made her look extremely quiet and pure. Lin Fan could not help but feel weird. Yeah. Almost every time he came to the library, he would meet Lu Lin. Why did it feel like she lived here? Finally, Lin Fan could not help but ask the question in his heart, "You seem to always be in the library. Don't tell me you live here." Lu Ling's snow-white face blushed slightly. Then she said in a somewhat reproachful tone, "I have no choice. When I heard that the famous Professor Lin Fan was recruiting students, I hurriedly sent an email, but I wasn't selected. So I can only stay in the library, study hard, and continue my postgraduate studies." When Lin Fan heard this, he could not help but reveal an awkward expression. "You sent an email, I might not have noticed." When he was recruiting students, Lin Fan received tens of thousands of emails. Therefore, he asked Lil White to pick 10 students from each field who had the most potential and were the most outstanding. Lu Ling always had difficulty answering even simple questions. It was normal that she was not picked as one of the top 10 physics students. Lu Ling looked at Lin Fan's awkward expression and rolled her eyes. She deliberately said in a pitiful tone, "I was the first one to send you an email." Then she could not help but burst out laughing. "I lied to you, I didn't send you an email." After a pause, Lu Ling said, "Oh right, what books are you looking for in the library this time?" Lin Fan coughed lightly and said, "Nervous system research from neuron to brain, the constitution of neuron, nervous transmission, animation, mathematical methods in 3D games and computer images and game program patterns. Reward, computer science experience increases by 1 level, gaming helmet and working principles. Nervous transmission, animation, game program patterns." "What do you want to study?" Lu Ling was a little puzzled. "A sensory game." She had done some research on these things and quickly made a guess. "You can say that," said Lin Fan. Lu Ling's interest was immediately piqued. Her eyes turned into crescents as she said happily, "That's great, I hope you can invent it as soon as possible." Obviously, she was very interested in games. Lin Fan said, "Don't worry, it won't take long." The two of them walked forward as they talked. They passed through the language section, the mathematics section, the chemistry section. They went to the medical neurology category and found nervous system research from neuron to brain, the constitution of neuron and nervous transmission. Then, the two went to the animation and game programming bookshelf and found animation, mathematical methods in 3D games and computer images and game program patterns. After that, they each carried a few thick books and sat down in their usual seats. Lin Fan did not hesitate too much. He opened a book and flipped through it quickly. In just 2 minutes, he had finished flipping through the hundreds of pages of the book. This scene. Liu Qian, who was walking into the library, saw everything. She had wanted to ask Lin Fan to give her some guidance. However, she quickly shut her mouth and revealed a thoughtful look. Eh? After more than 20 minutes, Lin Fan finished reading the last book, Game Program Patterns. Lin Fan had just put down his book when a crisp voice rang out in his mind. "Ding, congratulations on completing the mission. Watch a biology experiment 1-1 and a computer experiment 1-1. Read nervous system research from neuron to brain, the constitution of neuron, nervous transmission, animation, mathematical methods in 3D games and computer images and game program patterns. Reward, computer and biology experience increases by 1 level, gaming helmet and working principles. Ding, upgrade successful. Congratulations, you've obtained academician computer experience. Ding, upgrade successful. Congratulations, you've obtained academician biology experience. 1,472,365. 64,663. C02 plus H20, CH20 plus O2. 6CO2 plus 12H20 C6H1206 plus 6H2O plus 6O2. Instantly, a huge amount of codes and complicated biological knowledge flooded Lin Fan's mind like a tidal wave. Then, the principle of creating the gaming helmet appeared in Lin Fan's mind. "Do you wish to extract the gaming helmet?" Mission accomplished. He could use the gaming helmet immediately. Even Lin Fan could not help but feel excited. He stood up and said, "I have something to do, so I'll leave first." After saying that, he strode out. He could not wait to retrieve the gaming helmet and play with it. Lu Ling opened her mouth and was about to say something. However, looking at how anxious Lin Fan was, he could only swallow his words. She looked at the draft paper on the table and muttered, "Anyway, this time there's only one question that I can't answer. I'll save it for next time." Lin Fan did not choose to go to the office. Instead, he drove the Cullinan back to the coiling dragon villa. Do you wish to extract the gaming helmet? Yes. In the next moment, a helmet made of metal appeared in front of him. This was the gaming helmet. Lin Fan looked at the helmet curiously. Then he put it on his head. The gaming helmet was made of metal on the outside, but the inside was very soft and comfortable. It also had excellent soundproofing properties. Lin Fan placed the carbon-based chip into a backup phone. Then he upgraded the phone's program on the computer. About half an hour later, everything was ready. Lin Fan muttered, "I have the equipment, now I need to design a game." Thinking of this, Lin Fan could not help but feel a headache. Even though he had academician computer experience and mastered the production and working principles of the gaming helmet, it was extremely troublesome for him to design a game by himself. Without a few days or even dozens of days of hard work, it would probably be impossible to complete. Lin Fan sighed and said, "Forget it, I'll apply for a patent and publish a thesis first." Even though Lin Fan had endless wealth, he was not sloppy when it came to applying for patents for inventions. Otherwise, when his inventions were circulated to the market, the patents would be registered by others. That would put him in an extremely passive position. As for publishing a thesis, it was almost a habit of Lin Fan. "Lil White. I'm here, master." The super smart watch on his wrist made a crisp sound. "Help me register a patent for the gaming helmet and write a thesis on it," Lin Fan said. "All right, master," said Lil White. Then the super smart watch shot out a red light. About 10 minutes later, patent documents from countries all over the world appeared on the display of the super smart watch. "Master, the patent for the gaming helmet has been registered. Also, the thesis on the gaming helmet has been sent to your email." As soon as Lil White finished speaking, Lin Fan's phone vibrated. An email popped up. It was titled "Principles and Future of Gaming Helmets," which Lil White had just edited. Lin Fan glanced around and said, "Lil White, not bad. The first author will be me and the second authors will be Qiu Zhengsheng, Liu Wei, Wu Tian, and Zheng Kaiyan. Then send the thesis to Nature's editorial department. They should review it as quickly as possible." "Yes, master," Lil White said. Suddenly, Lin Fan, Qiu Zhengsheng, Liu Wei, Wu Tian, and Zheng Kaiyan's names appeared out of thin air in the thesis. Then Lil White sent it directly to Nature's editorial department. Suddenly, Lin Fan thought of something and asked, "Lil White, can you develop a game that suits the gaming helmet?" "Sure," Lil White said. "That's great," Lin Fan said happily. After all, he was very interested in the gaming helmet. However, he had a headache because he needed to design a game. This feeling was like having a treasure mountain, but there was an incomparably long and rugged mountain road ahead. Lil White was able to help with the design. It was like adding a ropeway to a long, rugged mountain road. It was so convenient. "What kind of game do you want, master?" asked Lil White. "Adventure category," Lin Fan replied without hesitation. "All right, master," Lil White said. About 10 minutes later, Lil White said, "Master, a game has been installed on your spare phone. It's called World." "All right," Lin Fan said happily. The game was installed, and he could enter the game immediately. Lin Fan quickly picked up his spare phone. Indeed, there was an unfamiliar icon with the word World on it. Then Lin Fan lay down on the bed and connected the gaming helmet to his backup phone. At this moment, a crisp notification sounded out in Lin Fan's ear. "Do you wish to activate the gaming helmet?" "Activate," Lin Fan said. "Hiss." Lin Fan felt his neck tighten. The next moment, Lin Fan's vision turned dark. A crisp sound rang out in his ears again. "Welcome to the gaming helmet." Then, a row of floating characters appeared in front of Lin Fan. "Enter World." Lin Fan did not hesitate at all and said, "Yes." In the next moment, a patch of green grassland appeared in front of Lin Fan. A gust of wind blew. He could feel the cool breeze and the touch of the grass. When Lin Fan raised his head, he could see sparrows flying across the sky and the warm sun hanging in the air. All of this, everything was so real. In fact, Lin Fan had a strange feeling. It was as if he was not in the game at all, but had entered a real world. Lin Fan walked into the distance slowly. Before long, a sea of flowers appeared in front of them. Red, blue, purple, it was very beautiful. The air was filled with a rich fragrance. At this moment, a long snake with patterns all over its body suddenly darted out from the sea of flowers. It spat out venom and quickly slithered toward Lin Fan. When Lin Fan saw this, he hurriedly retreated. However, the more he retreated, the more the snake closed in. In the next moment, the snake sped up and bared its sharp teeth, wanting to bite Lin Fan's calf. Lin Fan quickly dodged. If this were the outside world, Lin Fan would have become a superhuman existence after consuming the Constitution Enhancement Potion multiple times. With his speed and strength, he could easily take care of the snake. However, in the virtual world, I think you should take a look at. His strength and speed were only on par with ordinary people. It was really difficult to dodge the long snake. In fact, Lin Fan was bitten by a long snake in the calf. A piercing pain assaulted his heart. Immediately after, his entire body felt numb. After a while, the world in front of him suddenly shattered. "You died, game over," a crisp voice rang out in Lin Fan's mind. He entered the game and was bitten to death by a snake in the blink of an eye. Lin Fan could not help but reveal an awkward look. "Do you wish to re-enter the game?" "Yes." In the next moment, Lin Fan appeared once again on the boundless plains. This time, he did not move forward immediately. Instead, he found a suitable wooden stick and 2 stones. Then he continued to walk toward the flowers. As expected, the long snake appeared again. Lin Fan grinned, "Good." Then he raised the stick and slapped the long snake. When the long snake was on its last breath, he did not forget to smash it with a stone, completely ending its life. At this moment, a faint light flashed in the snake's head that had been smashed into meat paste. The spirit wind pill is a mysterious spiritual energy within the spirit snake's body. After consumption, it can increase speed by 10 points. A notification rang out in Lin Fan's mind. Seeing this, only then did Lin Fan reveal a look of realization. No wonder this snake moved so fast. It turned out that there was such a thing inside its body. Kill monsters and steal treasures. This game seemed to be quite interesting. As Lin Fan thought about this, he slowly lowered his head and picked up the spirit wind pill. Although the spirit wind pill was inside the snake's body, there was not a trace of blood or stench on it. There was still a faint glow on its surface. Lin Fan did not hesitate and put it into his mouth. The moment the spirit wind pill entered his mouth, his entire body felt a slight chill. Then Lin Fan walked over quickly. His speed was obviously much faster. This made Lin Fan even more interested in the game. He continued forward and arrived at a dense forest. Among them, there were a few crystal-clear fruits on one of the trees. Curious, Lin Fan plucked a fruit and put it into his mouth. It was juicy, sweet, and delicious. Lin Fan could not help but praise, "I didn't think that my taste buds would work in the game." When he finished eating the fruit, a crisp notification sounded in his mind. Consuming an energy fruit will increase strength by 10 points. As expected, Lin Fan could feel a surge of energy within his body. He looked at the remaining fruits above his head, and his eyes lit up completely. Without any hesitation, he picked another fruit and put it into his mouth. Sweet and crisp. Delicious. At the same time, his strength increased once again. When Lin Fan plucked another fruit and was halfway through eating, an ape suddenly jumped down from the tree. It bared its teeth and roared continuously. When he saw the remaining half of the fruit in Lin Fan's hand, he seemed to be completely furious. He raised his hand and slapped Lin Fan's head. Luckily, Lin Fan had taken the spirit wind pill, so his speed had increased by quite a bit. Finally, he successfully dodged the ape's attack. However, the ape did not give up. It continued to attack. Lin Fan dodged a few times and knew that continuing was not the way. He took out the stone he had prepared and found an opportunity to hit the ape's head. After eating 2 energy fruits, Lin Fan's strength was not bad either. The stone smashed down, directly hitting the ape until it took 2 steps back. Lin Fan understood that the ape was not invincible, so he smacked its head again. Fast, accurate, ruthless. 2 consecutive smacks directly scared away the ape. Meanwhile, Lin Fan continued to eat the energy fruits and played the game happily. They Lin Fan was happy, but some people were the complete opposite. 427 Debate, another contribution. It was midnight in America. The editor of Nature, Esmond Bevan, was sleeping soundly. At this moment, the phone beside his bed suddenly rang, waking him up. Generally speaking, it was very annoying to be woken up by a phone call in the middle of the night. However, not only was Esmond Bevan not angry, but his face even showed a touch of excitement. He did not answer the call immediately. Instead, he quickly went to the study and turned on his computer. Unfortunately, he did not see what he wanted to see. He had no choice but to return to his bed and continue sleeping. As Esmond Bevan fell asleep, the phone next to him rang again. He got up excitedly again. When he came to the computer, an email popped up. "There's mail, haha, it wasn't in vain for me to wait every night," Esmond Bevan shouted excitedly. Waiting every night. That was right, he had been waiting every night. Ever since he was woken up by a phone call and received Lin Fan's email, he had been waiting for Lin Fan's email every night. This was because it was related to whether he could get a promotion and a raise in the editorial department of Nature. However, he soon frowned slightly. "The principles and future of gaming helmets, what is this? It seems like I got happy over nothing again," Esmond Bevan said helplessly. Although he said that, he still glanced at the author's name. It was this glance that made his depressed gaze light up. He jumped up in excitement. "Lin Fan, it's Hua Nation's Lin Fan. Hahaha, I finally got his thesis again. The principles and future of gaming helmets, this is absolutely extraordinary." Esmond Bevan read the thesis carefully from beginning to end. He was reading the thesis with anticipation and seriousness. As he read deeper into the thesis, his eyes gradually widened and his face revealed an unconcealable excitement. It enters the game. My God. This is unbelievable. I need to hurry up and tell the managing editor yes. As he spoke, he quickly picked up his phone and dialed a number. Then, many white-haired computer experts gathered at Hemp Rope Technology University. They either dripped eye drops or washed their faces with cold water. Those were the only ways to keep themselves awake. Only then could they focus all their attention on the thesis in front of them. Gaming helmets. They allow one's nerves to connect to the game world. Connecting to the game world. Among these people, there was no lack of big names who had won various awards in the computer field, including the Turing Award. They had the most advanced computer technology and had forward thinking. Even so, they looked at the data and introduction in the thesis and could not help but be dumbfounded. The journal staff of Nature asked, "Professors, do you think there's a problem with these data?" After all, when he showed them Lin Fan's research papers in the past, they were filled with admiration. This time their reactions were clearly different. Charles, who was wearing a golden pocket watch, said, "It's not that there's a problem, but it involves the nervous system of the human body. We can't understand it at all. We need a biologist to come over." Some of the big names at the side nodded in agreement. Although they had studied some biology during their higher education, that was only very shallow learning. The journal staff suddenly said, "Don't worry, the biologists will be here soon." As if to verify his words, another large group of middle-aged and elderly people who looked full of wisdom walked in quickly. "Where is Professor Lin's thesis?" "Let me see." Ever since Lin Fan invented the human islet recovery drug, he had become a leader in the field of biology, chemistry, and medicine. When the biologists heard that Lin Fan had published another research paper on the human body, they all rushed over without any hesitation. They could not wait to read the thesis. Soon someone sighed. Professor Lin actually found the frequency of the nervous system. Amazing, it's simply too powerful. That's right, the human nervous system is equivalent to a circuit. The gaming helmet receives the simulated signal and then forms an image in the mind. The electrical signals allow the human body to have special senses like smell, sight, taste, and even touch. Heavens, as expected of Professor Lin. The computer experts at the side also joined in the discussion. You mean the thesis is correct? I don't know if it's correct or not, but it's possible to achieve it in the nervous system. Of course, we still need strict experiments to see if it's correct or not. Time passed quickly amidst the praises, quarrels, and experiments. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. At this time in the Foreign Chip Alliance, the president and the vice presidents of all four regions were gathered together. They were drinking red wine and eating steak as usual, extremely indifferent. At this moment, a man in a suit and leather shoes hurriedly ran over. The president could not help but put down the knife and fork in his hand. He frowned slightly and said, "Jack, I've told you many times not to panic when you encounter something. Everything can be solved slowly. The sky won't fall." "That's right," the vice president of the Western region echoed. "Just like the carbon-based photolithographic machine and carbon-based chips invented by Hua Nation last time. So what if they're powerful? Our silicon-based chips are enough for all mobile applications today. In addition, the carbon-based chips and carbon-based photolithographic machines will pollute the environment and affect the body." When the president heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smug expression. He was the one who came up with the idea that claiming carbon-based chips would pollute the environment and affect the body. They had used the media's crazy bombardment to achieve great results. Nowadays, many foreign countries had already boycotted carbon-based chips. This meant that their silicon-based chips still had the largest market. So what if carbon-based chips had good performance? If they were not used in the overseas market, it would not affect them at all. The vice president of the Western region noticed the smile on the president's face. "Jack, don't be anxious. Sit down and eat some steak and drink some red wine." Jack had no choice but to eat a piece of steak and drink a glass of red wine. The president nodded in satisfaction. "Jack, why are you in such a hurry? Is there something you want to tell us?" Jack took a deep breath and said seriously, "Dear Presidents, Professor Lin has submitted another paper to Nature." 428 It's over, reminder. The knife and fork in the president's hand fell onto the table. He did not know what kind of thesis Lin Fan had submitted to Nature. However, just hearing this, the president's heart inexplicably tightened. Ever since Lin Fan invented the carbon-based chip, the president had conducted an in-depth investigation and research on him. Lin Fan solved a few unsolved math questions, invented the earthquake prediction device, the human islet recovery drug, the super battery, and so on. Lin Fan was definitely an existence with extremely high intelligence that could create miracles. If he interfered with the chip again, then the consequences were absolutely terrible. The vice president of the Western region was obviously very wary of Lin Fan. He asked, "What thesis did Professor Lin submit to Nature?" "The principles and future of gaming helmets." "The principles and future of gaming helmets." The leaders looked at each other in confusion. Gaming helmets. They had some vague guesses. However, the Foreign Chip Alliance only cared about chips. As for gaming helmets, they were not interested. According to Hemp Rope Technology University, this gaming helmet has a special function that allows people to enter the game world with their consciousness, Jack continued. In addition, operating this helmet requires a very high chip performance. Perhaps a carbon-based chip must be used to operate it successfully. The cups, knives, and forks in the hands of the leaders fell to the ground. Their faces turned pale. They knew very well how attractive this gaming helmet that could enter games was to foreigners. In the face of carbon-based chips with better performance, the president and vice presidents managed to make ordinary people who did not know the truth refuse to use carbon-based chips and continue to use silicon-based chips through the media and internet trolls on the grounds of environmental protection and health. Once the gaming helmet appeared, however, in the eyes of foreigners, what did all that matter? Were environmental protection and health more important than entering the game world? Absolutely not. It was over. The Foreign Chip Alliance was completely finished. Jamba University. Even though Lin Fan had not come to the office for the past 2 days, Liu Qian, Nai Junjiang, Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, Jiang Keiaquen, and Hao Jiwu still went to school on time and took the initiative to learn with an extremely serious attitude. However, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu often unconsciously looked at the empty desk in front of them, and a trace of longing appeared on their pretty faces. Liu Kaienqian saw all of this. When the school bell rang, Liu Kaienqian took the initiative to walk to the dormitory with Zia Bing and Zia Zhu. Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, you two look exactly the same. Are you twins? Liu Kaienqian asked. Zia Bing and Zia Zhu said in unison, yes. So it's true, Liu Kaienqian was pleasantly surprised. I heard that twins think the same way. Are you two the same? Zia Bing and Zia Zhu said, most of the time, yes. Are the people and things you like the same? Liu Kaienqian continued. Zia Bing and Zia Zhu nodded slowly. Do you like Professor Lin Fan? Liu Kaienqian asked. Zia Bing's and Zia Zhu's pretty faces instantly turned red. They hurriedly lowered their heads, wishing they could bury their heads in the ground. Liu Kaienqian immediately knew the answer when she saw them like this. She thought about it and said, Professor Lin Fan is proficient in mathematics, logistics, biology, chemistry, computer science, and so on. He does have a strong charm. But I think it's best for you to distinguish between liking and worshipping. Liu Kaienqian saw that the two of them still had no reaction and hesitated for a moment. A few days ago, I was in the library. I saw Professor Lin Fan sitting together with a woman, talking and laughing. Moreover, Professor Lin Fan was a mess in front of her, flipping through books randomly. Obviously, Liu Kaienqian was talking about Lin Fan and Lu Ling reading together. Lu Ling had scolded Lin Fan for not choosing her as a student, but in Liu Kaienqian's eyes they were talking and laughing. Lin Fan used his scanning ability to read, but in Liu Kaienqian's eyes he was just flipping through books randomly. Liu Kaienqian felt that she had made it obvious enough. However, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu still did not seem to have any reaction. Liu Kaienqian could not help but say again, I think Professor Lin Fan might have a girlfriend. After getting along with them for a few days, Liu Kaienqian felt that Zia Bing and Zia Zhu were kind and nice. In terms of love affairs, Liu Kaienqian thought that she was experienced. She knew very well how painful it was to find out the person one liked had a partner. Therefore, she had to pull Zia Bing and Zia Zhu over in time before they fell too deep. However, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu still had their heads lowered, their pretty faces were red and they did not have much of a reaction. Liu Kaienqian thought they did not hear her. Therefore, she said again, Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, Professor Lin Fan probably has a girlfriend. Zia Bing and Zia Zhu raised their heads and said, we know. Liu Kaienqian heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, Zia Bing and Zia Zhu said, we're also Lin Fan's girlfriends. Liu Kaienqian was speechless. Regarding nature, the Foreign Chip Alliance and what happened at Jiangbei University, Lin Fan had no idea about them. Other than eating, drinking, and sleeping, he had been completely immersed in world. In world, he roamed freely, killing monsters and admiring the beautiful scenery. This was an unprecedented novelty. Of course, this novelty did not last forever. For example, right now, Lin Fan was slowly regaining his composure. He called the 2-star Michelin restaurant. Not long after, top-grade abalone, M9 beef, sea urchin eggs, king crab, and so on were delicately made and sent over. As Lin Fan ate, he commented, although the food in the game has some taste, it's still different from real food. The delicacies in reality have a special feeling of filling the stomach and lasting for a long time. In the game, only when you eat do you have that kind of feeling. When all the food on the table was finished, Lin Fan burped. By the way, I don't think I've signed in today right. Lin Fan muttered to himself and focused on the sign-in system. Sign in. Ding, congratulations, you've received 1 million yuan. Lin Fan pursed his lips and said, why is it this again? At this moment, the phone next to him rang urgently. Lin Fan looked at the caller ID. It was Feng Jixiang from the Institute of Science. 429 Shock Cooperation 1. Lin Fan and Feng Jixiang had interacted many times. He had a good impression of this old man who worked hard for the country's scientific and technological development. Therefore, without much hesitation, he pressed the answer button. Professor Lin, you submitted Principles and Future of Gaming Helmets to Nature. Feng Jixiang's urgent voice sounded as soon as the call was connected. Yeah, Lin Fan said slowly. Gaming helmets, can they really be made? Feng Jixiang asked nervously. Lin Fan said, sure, I've been playing with one for a few days. Playing? How many days have you been playing? Feng Jixiang stuttered. Then he asked in disbelief, you mean? Lin Fan said, yes, I've already invented it. Good, good, haha, that's great. Feng Jixiang laughed happily. Professor Lin, where are you? I'll be right there. Coiling Dragon Villa, you've been here before. Do you still remember the location? Lin Fan said. I remember, I'll be right there, Feng Jixiang said. Then Lin Fan heard the sound of a collision from the phone. I'll take full responsibility, I'll compensate you for your car now. Lin Fan slowly placed his phone down and muttered, Feng Jixiang got into a car crash, he shouldn't be so agitated at his age. Lin Fan shook his head and returned to his room. He put on the gaming helmet and entered World Game again. In the game, Lin Fan was riding a white horse. He welcomed the breeze and galloped on the green grassland. At this moment, a huge claw suddenly stretched out from the ground in the distance. Lin Fan's expression was calm as he pulled out the blade from his waist and swung it fiercely. The claw broke. At the same time, a golden pearl of light appeared on the ground. This was the treasure that appeared after killing the monster. However, Lin Fan did not care at all. Instead, he continued to ride his horse forward. This was because he had experienced too many things like killing monsters and obtaining treasures in the past few days. There were some things that he did not even bother to pick up. When Lin Fan took off his gaming helmet, it was already a few hours later. He got up from the bed and stretched. At this moment, the doorbell rang urgently. Hearing this, Lin Fan came to the front of the door and slowly opened it. Professor Lin, so you're really home, Feng Jixiang said excitedly. At this moment, he was covered in sweat and looked rather disheveled. Lin Fan was stunned. When did you arrive? About 2 hours, Feng Jixiang said. Lin Fan could not help but reveal an awkward look. He thought that Feng Jixiang would only come in the afternoon. Who would have thought that he would come so quickly? 2 hours. In other words, he had been standing outside for 2 hours. It had been a long time. Lin Fan said, come in and drink some water. Feng Jixiang waved his hand and said, no need. Where? The gaming helmet you mentioned just now. In the bedroom, said Lin Fan. Thus the two of them went to the bedroom together. Feng Jixiang held the metal helmet and asked, this is the gaming helmet. Lin Fan nodded. Feng Jixiang was even more excited. He could not help but carefully examine the gaming helmet. Then he asked, can I try? Lin Fan nodded and helped Feng Jixiang put it on his head. Feng Jixiang only felt the back of his neck tighten slightly. In the next moment, he appeared on the beach. In the distance, there were surging waves. He raised his head, he could see the scorching sun. Feng Jixiang stuttered, this, weren't I in the coiling dragon villa just now trying out the gaming helmet? Am I dreaming? At this moment, a large crab suddenly crawled over to Feng Jixiang's feet and pinched his toes. Ugh. It hurts. I actually feel pain, this is not a dream. Then, Feng Jixiang held up the seawater and put it into his mouth. Salty. About 10 minutes later, Feng Jixiang took off his gaming helmet. His face was full of surprise as he sighed sincerely. Unbelievable, this is too unbelievable. After I put on the gaming helmet, I even thought that I had transmigrated. As he spoke, Feng Jixiang could not help but hug the gaming helmet tightly. It was as if he was holding a supreme treasure. Supreme treasure. In Feng Jixiang's heart, this was much more precious than countless supreme treasures. It was because Feng Jixiang understood that this gaming helmet was definitely a revolutionary invention. It would definitely cause the entire world to shake again. Professor Lin, can you let us study this helmet? Asked Feng Jixiang. Lin Fan was not surprised by such a request. He nodded and said, sure. Thank you, Professor Lin, I'll come back in 2 days to borrow your gaming helmet, Feng Jixiang said excitedly. Lin Fan could not help but ask, aren't you going to Jingbei now? After all, every time he studied something in the past, he had to bring it to the capital immediately. No need, Feng Jixiang said with a smile. A while ago, we applied for a scientific research institute in Jiangbei. In the next 2 days, some academicians and various equipment will be shipped over. Lin Fan nodded his head. Feng Jixiang said, "Oh, right. Professor Lin, are you planning to cooperate with Dahua Group to produce the game?" Lin Fan said it should be. Is there a problem? No problem, no problem, Feng Jixiang hurriedly said. A while ago, we just approved a few plots of land for Dahua Group. Now it seems that those plots of land aren't enough. Later, I'll report to the higher-ups and give Dahua some approval. The two of them continued to chat for a while before Feng Jixiang left with a smile on his face. Lin Fan sat on the sofa and casually scrolled through his phone. After a while he muttered, "Studying gaming helmets, looks like I have to make a few more game helmets as soon as possible." Thinking of this, Lin Fan dialed the number of the CEO of Dahua Group, Ran Fei. At this moment, in the chairman's office of Dahua Group, Ran Fei sat in front of the computer and flipped through the documents seriously. After a long while he sighed and said, "The carbon-based chip technology has already reached an absolute leading level. However, the market has not accepted it at all. The cost of carbon-based chips isn't high, but it's still a little higher than silicon-based chips. And silicon-based chips are already enough for daily needs. What should we do? If only there were some functions that require carbon-based chips, but it's too difficult." Ran Fei sighed again. The carbon-based chips were good, but no one cared about them. It had to be said that this was indeed a very uncomfortable matter. At this moment there was a dull knock on the door. A man wearing golden glasses rushed in with a document in his hand. "Director Liu, what's the matter?" Ran Fei asked. Director Liu said excitedly, "Nature. The latest issue of Nature published a thesis titled Principles and Future of Gaming Helmets." Gaming helmets? Ran Fei was puzzled. Dahua Group isn't involved in the gaming industry. He came from a technical background and only wanted to lead the company in researching and developing technology. Therefore, even when Ran Fei had enough manpower and financial resources, he never considered getting involved in extremely profitable fields such as games, real estate, cars, and other industries. The company had stuck with the same general direction over the years. Ran Fei felt that Director Liu, who had been with him for many years, should know. Director Liu said, "This gaming helmet is different. According to the thesis, it can bring a person's consciousness into the gaming world. In addition, the gaming helmet requires an ultra-high-performance chip to operate." As soon as he said this, Ran Fei immediately understood what the game helmet meant. Considering this gaming helmet could make a person's consciousness enter the game world, it would definitely make people go crazy. This gaming helmet would become popular all over the world. Would it not mean that carbon-based chips could be put to good use? This was good news. This was definitely great news. Ran Fei was about to laugh excitedly. At this moment the phone on the table rang. Originally Ran Fei wanted to reject it. He only had the gaming helmet in his mind. He wanted to hear more about the gaming helmet. However, when he saw that the caller ID was Lin Fan, he could not help but press the answer button. After all, Lin Fan was the biggest shareholder of the Dahua Group. "Hello, Mr. Lin, may I know why you're calling?" Ran Fei was someone who did not like to beat about the bush. Moreover, his entire heart was focused on the gaming helmet. Therefore he went straight to the point. Lin Fan said, "Oh, I invented a gaming helmet and I wanted to ask if you wanted to collaborate to produce it." When Ran Fei heard this, he was stunned. His mouth was half open and he was completely motionless. Lin Fan invented a gaming helmet. The person who Director Liu just mentioned was Lin Fan. He was the one who wrote the thesis on gaming helmets. That was right. Lin Fan was in the computer field, biology field, and physics field. He was definitely a big shot. In this world, who else could compare to Lin Fan? This time, he invented a piece of high-tech equipment that could allow one's consciousness to enter the game world. Why did Ran Fei not think of it earlier? Lin Fan saw that no one answered and continued, "Chairman Ran, are you not interested in this? If so, Ran Fei did not wait for Lin Fan to finish and quickly said, I'm interested, I'm interested. I'm coming to Jiangbei now, I think you should take a look at. After hanging up, Ran Fei called his secretary and said, help me book the earliest flight to Jiangbei. Then he quickly packed his things and prepared to walk out. Director Liu, are you still here? Director Liu's mouth twitched slightly, I've always been here. However, he still said in a very gentle voice, yeah, Chairman Ran, do you have something urgent to deal with? Yes, Ran Fei thought about it and said, forget it, come with me, we'll go to Jiangbei and talk about a collaboration with Professor Lin Fan. Discuss a collaboration with Professor Lin Fan. Meet Professor Lin Fan. Director Liu's heart raced. He was a technician. Lin Fan, who invented carbon-based photolithographic machines, super batteries, and other products, was his idol. Now he could see his idol. It was as if he was making a pilgrimage. How could his heart not beat faster? Director Liu hurriedly said, all right. About 3 hours later, Ran Fei and Director Liu arrived in Jiangbei. Ran Fei wanted to discuss the matter of the gaming helmet as soon as possible. On the other hand, Director Liu wanted to see his idol as soon as possible. Therefore, they did not take a break. As soon as they got off the plane, they headed straight for the Coiling Dragon Villa. At this moment, Lin Fan was sipping on spirit tea. He heard the doorbell ring and slowly opened the door. Mr. Lin, we finally meet again, Ran Fei greeted him with a smile. This is Liu Dazhai, the technical director of our Dahua group. Liu Dazhai quickly said in a somewhat nervous tone, hello, Mr. Lin. Liu Dazhai was 42 years old and was the technical director of Dahua Group. He had seen many important figures and attended many high-level meetings. At this moment, facing a young man who was only in his 20s, he was actually nervous. If outsiders knew about this, who knew what kind of expression they would have? However, Lin Fan did not mind it too much. He nodded his head calmly and said, come in. When the two of them walked in, they were immediately attracted by the fragrance of spirit tea. It was a refreshing smell. Seeing the two of them staring at the spirit tea, Lin Fan could not help but say, you guys should be thirsty, right? Sit down and have a cup of tea. He also knew that Ran Fei and Liu Dazhai had specially rushed over from Peng City. Giving them some tea was also the right way to treat guests. Following that, Lin Fan poured 2 cups of spirit tea and placed them in front of them. The refreshing fragrance became even stronger, causing Ran Fei and Liu Dazhai to instinctively pick up the teacups and pour the contents into their mouths. As soon as the spirit tea entered their mouths, their bodies and souls seemed to be cleansed in an instant. They had spent more than 3 hours rushing from Peng City to Jiangbei, yet their fatigue had completely disappeared at this moment. What replaced it was an unprecedented sense of ease and freedom. Ran Fei and Liu Dazhai were both intoxicated by the tea and could not extricate themselves. At this moment, Lin Fan asked, do you want to take a look at the gaming helmet? When Ran Fei heard Lin Fan's words, he finally reacted and stuttered, ah, all right, all right. Even though he responded like this, his eyes could not help but look at the spirit tea in front of him. Lin Fan said, if you want more, then pour it yourself. Ran Fei waved his hand and said, no, let's look at the game helmet first. What if Lin Fan thought that he was just enjoying himself and did not care about the gaming helmet? Lin Fan did not think too much about it and said, all right, the gaming helmet is inside. As he spoke, he got up and walked toward the bedroom. As for Ran Fei and Liu Dazhai, who obviously wanted to continue drinking spirit tea, Lin Fan left them be. Earlier, he had personally poured them a cup of spirit tea. If they wanted to continue drinking it, they should pour some themselves. Of course, he could not pour tea for them all the time. After Ran Fei and Liu Dazhai tried out the gaming helmet with Lin Fan's help, the two of them opened their mouths wide and were dumbfounded. After a while they sighed. Heavens! This helmet, could it be that it brought us through time? It's exactly the same as the real world. Unbelievable, this is unbelievable. Really, it's a godlike experience. Liu Dazhai had already read the thesis and explained the functions of the gaming helmet to Ran Fei. They had a certain understanding and expectations of the gaming helmet. However, they had never expected that it could be done to this extent. Eh? Lin Fan had already seen how Feng Zhixiang reacted when he wore the gaming helmet. At this moment he was already used to it. Therefore it was not too surprising. After Ran Fei and Liu Dazhai were tired from playing, Lin Fan said, "Chairman Ran, how is it? Do you want to collaborate to produce the gaming helmet?" When Ran Fei found out about the functions of the gaming helmet, he had already decided to work with Lin Fan. Now, after experiencing it for himself, he was even more determined about this idea. "Yes, yes," Ran Fei said after a pause. "Mr. Lin, please wait for me for a moment. I'll hold a video conference with the higher-ups and directors first." Lin Fan also knew the rules of a large company. There were many things that one person could not decide alone. Hence he nodded and said, "All right." At the same time, Lin Fan was even more determined not to manage a company. Otherwise, if he wanted to do something, he would have to hold meetings and explain himself. It was too troublesome. The video conference ended. Ran Fei said, "Mr. Lin, Dahua Group is willing to take 15% of the shares and obtain the exclusive rights to the gaming helmets. In addition, 50% of the profits from all the gaming helmets will belong to you." "Mr. Lin, what do you think?" Ran Fei was extremely nervous when he said this. He had personally experienced the gaming helmet and knew very well how big a sensation it would cause. If Lin Fan was not satisfied, then he would have a headache. This was because Ran Fei had tried his best to negotiate this with the higher-ups and directors. Lin Fan said, "All right, then let's do it this way." Did he agree? After a pause, Lin Fan said, "Also, I have a request. I want to produce a batch of gaming helmets as soon as possible." "Good, good," Ran Fei said excitedly. "Mr. Lin, don't worry, our Dahua Group will definitely produce the gaming helmets in the shortest time possible." Then he said, "I'll get someone to draft the contract now, okay?" After a while, a freshly printed contract was handed to Lin Fan. Lin Fan flipped through it quickly and signed his name. "I think you should take a look at." Immediately after, Ran Fei also signed and stamped his seal. At this point, the cooperation had been made official. Ran Fei hugged the contract tightly and said, "Mr. Lin, we won't disturb you anymore." Lin Fan nodded. However, he soon realized that Liu Dazhai did not want to leave. "Director Liu, is there anything else?" Lin Fan asked. Liu Dazhai was a little embarrassed. "Ahem, Mr. Lin, you're my idol, can you give me your autograph?" Lin Fan rubbed his nose. Did he have fans now? Seeing that Lin Fan did not reply, Liu Dazhai said, "I know that this is a very difficult request." Lin Fan smiled. "What's so difficult about that? Where should I sign?" Liu Dazhai quickly flipped through his leather bag and took out the latest issue of Nature. He said, "Mr. Lin, can you sign here?" Lin Fan raised his pen and quickly signed his name on the cover of the journal. Liu Dazhai looked at the flamboyant handwriting and hugged the journal tightly as if he had obtained a treasure. He bowed deeply toward Lin Fan and said excitedly, "Thank you, Mr. Lin." After saying that, he followed Ran Fei out with satisfaction. The next day the weather was clear. After Lin Fan ate his breakfast, he did not put on the gaming helmet. Instead, he drove the Cullinan toward Jiangbei University. After all, he was a teacher now. He had already been absent for a few days. When Lin Fan came to the office, Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, Nai Zhenjiang, Hao Jiwu, Jiang Keiaquen, and Liu Kaiyanqian were all focused on their studies and did not notice Lin Fan at all. At this moment, Lil White, who was lying on Hao Jiwu's shoulder, suddenly let out a loud meow. Then Lil White jumped down from Hao Jiwu's shoulder and came to Lin Fan's feet, rubbing against him. "Master, you're finally here, I missed you so much. When will you give me something delicious?" Hao Jiwu raised his head when he heard the meow. "Professor Lin, you're here," Hao Jiwu said in surprise. As his voice rang out, everyone raised their heads. Nai Zhenjiang, Jiang Keiaquen, and Liu Kaiyanqian were shocked. Xia Bing's and Xia Zhu's beautiful eyes flashed with a faint light. Then they hurriedly took out 2 bottles of energy drinks and passed them to Lin Fan. Lin Fan smiled as he took the 2 bottles and drank a mouthful from each. Seeing this, Xia Bing's and Xia Zhu's pretty faces were like blooming flowers, extremely brilliant. 432 Explanation. Something happened, too. Lin Fan nodded at everyone, then. He turned around and opened a bag of premium beef cat food. The cat Lil White made a purring sound as it ate. It's delicious, it's good that master is here. You're so greedy, Hao Zhiwu spat softly. Then he took a stack of draft paper and said, Professor Lin, I have a problem here. Lin Fan took a casual glance and picked up a pen to write quickly. Soon, a long reaction equation appeared on the draft paper. I see, I was wondering why I couldn't solve it, Hao Zhiwu suddenly understood. Professor Lin, where have you been these days? Hao Zhiwu asked after a pause. Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, Nai Zhenjiang, Jiang Keiaquen, Liu Kaianqian and the others could not help but perk up their ears. Obviously they were also very curious. Lin Fan said, didn't you say last time that you want a device that allows you to enter the game with your consciousness? Hao Zhiwu nodded. However, his face was still filled with confusion. He had said this before. However, what did this have to do with his problem? It could not be that he had been creating equipment for consciousness to enter the game these past few days, right? At this moment, hurried footsteps sounded from outside the corridor. Professor Lin, Professor Lin. Before the person arrived, there was an excited shout. Soon, biology professors Wu Tian and Zheng Kaiyan rushed into the office. Wu Tian exclaimed, Professor Lin, your latest thesis published on Nature, the Principles and Future of Gaming Helmets, is really amazing. Silence. The entire office was silent. Although Xia Bing, Xia Zhu, Nai Zhenjiang, Jiang Keiaquen, Liu Kaianqian and the others did not know what kind of paper it was, they all understood what it meant to publish a paper in Nature. Lin Fan had not come to the office for the past few days because he was writing this thesis. He wrote a paper for Nature in a few days. This. In the past, they often heard people say that Professor Lin Fan was a genius. It was as easy as eating a meal for him to publish a paper in top journals like Nature and Science. At that time, they did not believe it. Now they did. Nai Zhenjiang, Jiang Keiaquen and Liu Kaianqian were dumbfounded. Xia Bing's and Xia Zhu's pretty faces were full of admiration. Professor Lin, you wrote a thesis on gaming helmets, Hao Zhiwu shouted excitedly. Lin Fan scratched his ears and said, yes. Can I take a look? Hao Zhiwu asked hurriedly. Just like what he said a few days ago, he liked games. In fact, the reason why he chose bioengineering was to create equipment for consciousness to enter the game. Now, when Hao Zhiwu heard that Lin Fan had published a thesis on gaming helmets in Nature, how could he not be excited? This meant that there was progress in the gaming helmet, big progress. Zheng Kaiyan handed over the journal. Hao Zhiwu quickly flipped through it like a treasure. However, he frowned very soon after. There were many things inside that he could not understand at all. At this moment, Wu Tian said, Professor Lin, we didn't help at all this time. In the end, our names appeared as the second authors again. We're really too ashamed to accept it. Yao Zheng Kaiyan added. Although they said so, their faces were flushed and filled with joy. It was no wonder that Wu Tian and Zheng Kaiyan were like this. Within a year, they published 2 articles in top journals. Even if it was as the second author, that was something they did not even dare to think about in the past. What kind of glory was this? Lin Fan waved his hand and said, this is what you deserve. Then Wu Tian and Zheng Kaiyan asked Lin Fan some questions about the nervous system in the thesis. Thank you for your patience, Professor Lin, Wu Tian said. Let's go back and study this thesis. We won't disturb Professor Lin's lecture now. After saying that, he walked out with Zheng Kaiyan. At this moment, Zheng Kaiyan seemed to have thought of something and said, by the way, Professor Lin, do you know what happened to Hu Tian's family? What happened? Lin Fan asked. 2 days ago, I saw Hu Tian in a hurry to go home and asked her about it, Zheng Kaiyan said. She didn't say anything. I thought you knew. It should be nothing. Lin Fan looked at Zheng Kaiyan and Wu Tian's receding figures. After some hesitation, he took out his phone and sent Hu Tian a WeChat message. Lin Fan, Teacher Tianchen, you went home. However, Hu Tian did not reply after a long time. Lin Fan understood that something must have happened to Hu Tian's family. Hence he made a call. After a while, a tired voice came from the other end. Lin Fan. Teacher Tianxian, you went home, Lin Fan asked. Yes, Hu Tian said. Did something happen at home? Lin Fan asked again. Hu Tian was silent for a moment before she said in a hoarse voice, my second brother is injured. Although Hu Tian did not specifically say what kind of injury he had suffered, Lin Fan knew that he was definitely heavily injured. Otherwise, she would not be so sad. In addition, Lin Fan had some interactions with Hu Tian's second brother and knew that his name was Hu Shaodong. At first, Hu Shaodong wanted to show Lin Fan his strength through racing. As they got to know each other, he found that Hu Shaodong was a resolute and iron-blooded person, so his overall impression of him was not bad. Of course, the most important thing was that he was Hu Tian's second brother, his brother-in-law. Thus Lin Fan said, wait for me. One had to know. Lin Fan had Sun Simiao's medical experience. It was definitely not a problem for him to treat his injuries. Furthermore, Lin Fan had medical water, which was a magical treasure that could cure illnesses. After Lin Fan hung up the phone, he said to Zia Bing, Zia Zhu, and the other students, I have something to do and will be out for a few days. If you have any questions, you can ask the other professors or wait for me to come back to solve them. After saying that, he quickly walked out. Lil White, who was eating premium beef cat food, shouted, Goodbye, master. At this moment, the computer science professors Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei walked over with a copy of Nature. They were about to say something when Lin Fan left them with a figure that was quickly disappearing into the distance. This. Qiu Zhengsheng couldn't help but be stunned. At this moment, Hao Jiwu noticed the two of them and walked over. He said excitedly, Are you guys here to discuss the principles and future of gaming helmets with Professor Lin? Professor Lin has something urgent to attend to and will be away for a few days. I'm Professor Lin's student Hao Jiwu, I know a little about this. Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei looked at each other and nodded. All right. What does this mean? Hao Jiwu pointed at a chart. In this algorithm. This thing. Very soon, Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei realized that Hao Jiwu did not know anything. He did not know anything at all. He did not even understand the thesis at all. He wanted to explain the thesis to them. Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei did not know whether to laugh or cry. If he had completely understood the thesis, it would have been fine. The problem was that he had not fully understood the thesis. Therefore, Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei only chatted for a while before finding an excuse to leave the office. After all, as teachers, it was not good for students to feel that their knowledge was shallow and that they could not even understand a paper. When Qiu Zhengsheng and Liu Wei were holding Nature magazine and walking toward the teaching building with smiles on their faces, Wang Jun, who was also a computer science professor, happened to walk over. Wang Jun looked at their proud backs and sighed. A few days ago, Qiu Zhengsheng didn't recruit a new student. Instead, he dragged Lin Fan to the laboratory. If only I had discovered it earlier, the principles and future of gaming helmets. Wang Jun shook the Nature journal in his hand and let out a long sigh. His heart was filled with regret. If he had discovered it earlier, perhaps his name would have appeared as the second author. 433 Tragic, Special Medicine. Sha City. In a vast courtyard. Old Master Hu Nanshan, Hu Kaikshuan, Hu Guodong, Hu Tian and many other members of the Hu family were standing at the door. Their faces were full of sorrow and there were people sobbing and discussing. Shaodong, Shaodong. I hope it's not true. Why is this happening? Back then, when Old Master Hu Nanshan celebrated his birthday, he received a lot of spirit tea from Lin Fan. If it was consumed normally, it would definitely have the effect of prolonging life. Now, however, Hu Nanshan's face looked even more aged than when he had celebrated his birthday. When Hu Nanshan heard the voices of the crowd, he raised his eyebrows. Why are you crying? Shaodong was injured for the sake of the citizens. We must be proud of him. I'll see who dares to cry later. It had to be said that Hu Nanshan had a very high status in the Hu family. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone from the Hu family stopped sobbing. Hu Kaikshuan took a deep breath and said, We must be proud of Shaodong. At this moment, 3 jeeps and an ambulance slowly stopped. A large group of soldiers and doctors carried an unconscious man whose face was covered in wounds. This man was Hu Tian's second brother, Hu Shaodong. If one looked closely, one would notice that Hu Shaodong's face was not the only part injured. There were many wounds on his body. In fact, his legs had completely disappeared. He had become disabled. Even though everyone in the Hu family already knew about this, and even though the old man had already reprimanded everyone, everyone's eyes turned red after seeing Hu Shaodong's miserable appearance. At this moment, a middle-aged man with an emblem on his shoulder came to Hu Nanshan. "Old leader, I'm sorry, I couldn't protect Shaodong well and caused him to be so seriously injured. What are you talking about?" Hu Nanshan interrupted. "He's a warrior. Since he's a warrior, he should be prepared to make sacrifices at any time. Also, a warrior should be the one protecting others." Hu Nanshan could not help but look at Hu Shaodong. "I'm proud of him." "Yes, sir," the man with the emblem on his shoulder shouted. Then Hu Shaodong was carried into the room. As for the soldiers with the emblem, they did not stay any longer. After saluting Hu Nanshan, they turned around and left. After all, they were soldiers and had many missions to deal with. After the soldiers left, the Hu family looked at the doctors and nurses who were checking Hu Shaodong's hideous wounds and changing his dressing. They could not help but cry. The bone-scraping pain woke Hu Shaodong up. He rolled his eyes with difficulty and said in a hoarse voice, this is. Zhang Hongting choked and said, "Shaodong, it's okay, you're home now." Hu Shaodong blinked his eyes in realization. A hot tear rolled down his face. Who said that men did not cry? Men did not cry just because they had not reached that point of sadness. At this moment, the phone in Hu Tian's pocket vibrated slightly. She looked at the caller ID. It was Lin Fan. Although Hu Tian was very sad, she still pressed the answer button. "Teacher Tianxian, I've arrived at the entrance of the courtyard," Lin Fan said. Hu Tian sniffed and said, "All right, I'll come and fetch you now." After all, there were guards guarding the entrance of the courtyard where the Hu family lived. Outsiders were not allowed to enter and exit as they pleased. When Hu Tian saw Lin Fan, it was as if she had found someone to rely on. She could not help but throw herself into his arms as tears rolled down her cheeks. Lin Fan patted Hu Tian's shoulder lightly and said, "It's okay, I'm here. Second brother will be fine, take me to see him first." Hu Tian thought that Lin Fan was comforting her and nodded her head gently. Thus the two of them walked side by side to the Hu family's courtyard. When Lin Fan saw that Hu Shaodong was lying on a hospital bed with injuries all over his body and realized that he had lost both his legs, his expression changed slightly. Even though he had Sun Simiao's medical experience, there was no way to treat someone who had lost both legs. Now he could only place his hopes on medical water. In fact, Lin Fan did not have much hope for it. After a while, Lin Fan said, "I have a bottle of special medicine here, it should be able to help second brother Hu." As he spoke, he spent 10 million yuan to buy a bottle of medical water from the system. Everyone from the Hu family could not help but look at Lin Fan. Hu Nanshan also noticed Lin Fan and said, "You're so thoughtful." Clearly, he still remembered Lin Fan. This was normal. After all, it was all because of Lin Fan that Qin Weiming and Zhang Jian, the two pillars of the nation, asked Commander Yue Zixiao to come over to congratulate him. Lin Fan said, "I'll go give this to second brother Hu now." "Drink it now." How could Hu Shaodong drink something casually in his current condition? Hu Nanshan was about to refuse. However, he soon thought of the spirit tea. During this period of time, he often drank it. Every time he drank a cup, he felt refreshed. After a while, Hu Nanshan felt that all the small problems in his body had disappeared. If he had heard the news that Hu Shaodong was seriously injured and lost both his legs in the past, before he started drinking the spirit tea, he would have died. Hu Nanshan looked much younger than before. Lin Fan had magical tea leaves. Perhaps he also had a magic potion. Thinking of this, Hu Nanshan said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Lin Fan." With Hu Nanshan's approval, the others naturally did not say anything. When Lin Fan came to Hu Dong's side, Hu Tian saw his miserable state up close and could not help but hold Lin Fan's hand tightly. Lin Fan patted the back of her hand and said softly, "It'll be fine." He was very sure. Even though Lin Fan still did not know if the medical water would have any effect on him, he had the system and 7 billion red packets. There must be a way to solve the problem of this man's legs. Lin Fan said, "Second brother Hu, please open your mouth." Hu Shaodong blinked his eyes and opened his trembling mouth. Under everyone's gaze, he slowly drank the medical water. When the medical water entered his stomach, Hu Shaodong felt a warm current flowing through his stomach. Then his body, which was originally in extreme pain, quickly became relaxed and comfortable. In the eyes of outsiders, the hideous wounds on Hu Shaodong's body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This scene. Everyone's eyes almost 434 Mission Toy Factory. Lin Fan had been paying attention to the changes in Hu Shaodong's body. After pondering for a moment, he spent another 10 million yuan to buy a bottle of medical water from the system. Second brother Hu, drink another bottle. Hu Shaodong was still in a state of shock. Hence he did not hear Lin Fan's words at all. Lin Fan could only open his mouth again. Second brother Hu, open your mouth. Hu Shaodong finally reacted and replied, "Ah, all right." His voice was no longer as hoarse as before, and it sounded energized as though his health had returned to normal. The second bottle of medical water went down his throat. Hu Shaodong felt warm and comfortable. To outsiders, the wounds on his body healed even faster. Lin Fan had been staring at the changes in Hu Shaodong's body. Then, he spent another 10 million yuan to buy a bottle of medical water from the system. A bottle of medical water could cure countless illnesses. After 3 bottles, the effects were multiplied. In the blink of an eye, the wounds on Hu Shaodong's body lessened. About 10 minutes later, all his wounds had healed. Seeing this, Lin Fan sighed. Hu Shaodong's legs had not recovered yet. Hu Tian could not help but ask, "Brother, how do you feel?" Hu Shaodong clenched his fists and said in a powerful voice, "I'm fine, I feel like I'm fine now." Hu Nanshan nodded repeatedly. Then he said to Hu Shaodong, "Shaodong, hurry up and thank Lin Fan." Even Hu Nanshan had never heard of a medicine that could heal wounds in such a short time. Medicine. In Hu Nanshan's opinion, perhaps, this could not simply be called medicine. It was divine medicine. Without a doubt, its value was immeasurable. Yet Lin Fan was willing to take out 3 bottles in a row. This was definitely a huge favor. Hu Shaodong also understood this and said seriously, "Lin Fan, thank you." Lin Fan waved his hand and said, "Second brother, you don't have to be so polite, besides, I didn't really manage to help you." As he spoke, he could not help but look down at Hu Shaodong's legs. "It's good enough," Hu Shaodong said dejectedly. "After all, it's impossible for legs to grow back." At this moment, Lin Fan's head rang out with a clear sound. Ding! Mission: buy 1 million toys and make 100 different toys. Reward: perfect artificial limbs as well as the machinery, tools, and principles for making artificial limbs. When Lin Fan heard that, his expression changed slightly. "I have a way to make second brother Hu stand up." As soon as he said this, everyone present revealed an unconcealable excitement. However, Lin Fan then said, "Teacher Tianchen, do you know if there's a large toy factory in Sha City?" A large toy factory. Did he not say that he could make Hu Shaodong stand up? Why was he suddenly asking about a toy factory? Although everyone was puzzled, Hu Tian still replied, "There are some toy factories in the north of the city." Lin Fan nodded, "All right." After saying that, he did not say anything else and strode out. Only the Hu family members were left looking at each other. Was the toy factory related to helping Hu Shaodong stand up? He could not possibly use a toy to stand up, right? Lin Fan sat in the Cullinan and headed toward the north of the city. After a while, he arrived in front of a rather large factory called Kinkin Toy. The security guard at the door quickly noticed Lin Fan and said, "Hello, what's the matter?" Lin Fan said, "Tell your factory manager that I want to buy the toy factory." Lin Fan's thoughts were simple. The mission was to buy 1 million toys. It would definitely be very slow to buy them in bulk. The simplest and most direct method was to buy the entire factory. In this way, the toys in the factory would be bought by him. In addition, Lin Fan needed to make 100 different toys. It would be more convenient to buy a factory and make them himself. However, the security guard was stunned by his words. Anyone who suddenly heard that someone wanted to buy a huge factory would be a little stunned. Moreover, the other party was a young man. At this moment, a Porsche Cayenne drove over from afar. The security guard immediately stood up straight and said, "Hello, factory manager Yao." Then, a middle-aged man with a big belly slowly walked down. Factory manager Yao nodded to show his greeting. "What happened here?" he asked. The security guard hesitated for a moment, but he did not know what to say. Should he directly say that this young man wanted to buy the toy factory? The factory manager would definitely scold him, right? Lin Fan said, "You came at the right time, I want to buy your factory." Factory manager Yao was also stunned for a moment. Obviously, he did not expect Lin Fan to have such a request. Factory manager Yao could not help but size Lin Fan up. He realized that Lin Fan's expression was calm, as if he was not joking. After a while, factory manager Yao finally said, "Our Kinkin toy factory is doing very well. Our annual profit is more than 10 million yuan and it's still expanding. For the time being, I have no intention of selling it, so I can only apologize to you." If Lin Fan were just an ordinary young man, factory manager Yao would not have bothered saying so much. In fact, he would not even have gotten out of the car. It was because Lin Fan was driving a luxury car that was worth tens of millions of yuan, Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Lin Fan acted like he did not hear him and said, 500 million yuan. Factory manager Yao's body stiffened slightly. 500 million yuan. In fact, their factory was only worth some money. The machines and raw materials were not worth much money. If it were a big brand toy factory, there might be some brand value. However, Kinkin Toy Factory had only been established for a few years and had no brand value at all. 500 million yuan. It definitely exceeded the actual price of the factory. Seeing that manager Yao did not say anything, Lin Fan said again, 1 billion yuan. 1 billion yuan. This was not the actual price of the factory, but several times more. Factory manager Yao felt his throat go dry. Seeing that manager Yao still did not answer, Lin Fan frowned slightly and said, 2 billion yuan. At this moment, factory manager Yao finally reacted and hurriedly said, "I'll sell it. If you need it, I can leave all the materials, workers, equipment, sales channels, and so on to you," factory manager Yao continued. Not selling. It was just that the price was not high enough. Lin Fan nodded his head in satisfaction. "All right." Seeing that manager Yao was still standing beside him, he frowned again and asked, "What are you still standing there for? Go and draw up the contract. Today I'll become the boss of Kinkin Toy Factory." "Yes, sir." Factory manager Yao hurriedly responded and jogged back to the car. Then he quickly went into the factory. 435 continuous level-ups announcement. Factory manager Yao's name was Yao Hanking. Even though he was the factory manager, the entire factory did not belong to him alone. Instead, it was opened by 3 people including him. Normally, it would be difficult for one to even get a job in a factory like this. If they wanted to sell it, it would be even more troublesome and take a longer time. After all, everyone had different thoughts. Some people did it for their ideals, while others did it for their interests. However, in just 2 hours, Kinkin Toy Factory quickly drafted the contract and completed the ownership change. What ideals? What interest? In front of $2 billion, they were nothing. After the transaction was completed, Yao Hanking's entire face broke into a smile. Lin Fan's expression remained the same. He focused on the mission system. Ding! Mission: buy 1 million toys, 1 million 1 million, and make 100 different toys. Reward: perfect artificial limbs as well as the machinery, tools, and principles for making artificial limbs. The mission was already half completed. At the same time, 200,000 red packets instantly appeared on his phone. However, Lin Fan did not immediately go to collect the red packets. At this moment, a series of notifications rang out in Lin Fan's mind. Ding System Upgrade Level 8. Level 8 Reward 200 yuan for every breath, 200 yuan for every second of sleep, and 200 yuan for every step taken. Rewards are distributed at 12 a.m. daily. Upgrade cost 1.62133 billion, 1 billion, not including gifts and gambling. In addition, all items obtained from the system are prohibited from being traded. Ding System Upgrade LV9. Level 9 Reward 500 yuan for every breath, 500 yuan for every second of sleep, and 500 yuan for every step taken. Rewards are distributed at 12 a.m. daily. Upgrade cost 102,330,000, 2 billion, not including gifts and gambling. In addition, all items obtained from the system are prohibited from being traded. Ding, congratulations, you've completed the hidden mission. You've spent a total of 1 billion yuan and received 5 platinum packets. As the series of voices rang out in his mind, even Lin Fan could not help but curl his lips up. He had leveled up 2 levels in a row. When he was at level 7, if he only counted the money he earned from breathing, walking, and sleeping, it would be about 7 million yuan a day. At level 9, however, that sum had increased by 5 times. In other words, Lin Fan could earn more than 35 million yuan just by breathing, walking, and sleeping every day. He would get 1 billion a month. That was a terrifying number. In fact, Lin Fan did not care about this bit of money. The key was the 5 platinum packets. Lin Fan had never opened a platinum packet before, but a golden packet had given him spirit tea seeds, double shares coupon, and so on. There was a high chance of him getting good stuff. Platinum packets were definitely worth looking forward to. After a while, Lin Fan finally collected his thoughts. He looked at Yao Hanking, who was holding his phone and counting the balance back and forth. He had yet to leave. Lin Fan asked, "Is there anything else?" After all, he could leave now that payment had been made. Yao Hanking hesitated for a moment and said, "Mr. Lin, I wonder if I can continue working in the factory." "Don't worry, I won't take the shares, I'll just be an ordinary manager. I've been a toy worker for more than 10 years and a factory manager for a few years. I've been in charge of the management, operation, and production of the toy factory, from toy production to offline sales and after-sales. I'm very familiar with the entire process." The current him could be said to have complete freedom of wealth. However, Yao Hanking had a feeling that if he followed Lin Fan, he would climb higher and go further. Lin Fan did not care about management, operations, sales, and so on. However, production. This was what Lin Fan needed. After all, next he needed to make 100 different types of toys. Only then could he complete the mission. "Can you make 100 different toys?" Lin Fan asked. Yao Hanking did not understand why he would ask such a question. However, he still replied immediately, "If the toy is considered different after slight modifications, then I can make hundreds or thousands of toys." Lin Fan nodded. "All right, then teach me how to make 100 different toys now." Teach him how to make 100 different toys. Yao Hanking was stunned again. This. A super tycoon who spent 2 billion yuan to buy a toy factory wanted to learn how to make toys. "Why can't I?" Lin Fan frowned. Yao Hanking quickly said, "Of course, I'll go to the workshop with you now. There are materials and tools for making all kinds of toys." At this moment in the workshop, a group of workers were either standing and operating machines, doing manual work, or welding. When they saw Yao Hanking, they shouted, "Hello, Factory Manager Yao." Obviously, these workers still did not know that their boss had been quietly replaced. Yao Hanking coughed lightly and said, "Everyone stop what you're doing." When everyone heard this, they stopped their machines and gathered around. Yao Hanking continued, "I have something to announce to everyone. From today onward, Mr. Lin is the new boss of our Kinkin toy factory." Hence, all the employees looked at Lin Fan and said in unison, "Hello, Boss Lin." Their change of words could be said to be very simple. This was normal. They usually did not interact with people like bosses. In their hearts, As long as they worked normally and the boss paid them normally, it did not matter who the boss was. Lin Fan said, "Hello everyone, I want to announce something. Kinkin Toy Factory will soon produce some other things. Those who want to stay can continue to stay. If you stay, your salary will double. Those who don't want to stay can go through the resignation procedures and will pay N+2 compensation." After all, as long as he completed the mission, he would be able to obtain the machinery, tools, principles, and other things needed to make prosthetic limbs. Since he had bought the factory, he would go with the flow. Otherwise, it would be a waste. As for the compensation and doubling their salary, Lin Fan did not care about it at all. "Really? I'll get double my salary. I'll stay. I'll stay. Me too." As Lin Fan's voice fell, the entire factory was filled with intense shouts. The reason why they came to work in the toy factory was definitely not because they liked toys. It was just to make money. Now that they could double their salary, they naturally did not want to miss this chance. As for what was produced, what did it matter? Lin Fan nodded. "You don't have to agree immediately. Today is a paid day off. Go back and think about it. Just come back tomorrow. 436 mission completed. You can stand up soon. There's no need to consider." "I agree. I agree too." All the workers shouted. The entire workshop was noisy. No one chose to leave. After all, their salary would double. What if they went back and thought about it for a night and in the end, they lost their chance? They would definitely regret it for the rest of their lives. Seeing this, Lin Fan could not help but frown. He did not like this kind of noisy scene, especially since he still had a mission to complete. Hu Tian and Hu Xiaodong were still waiting for him at home. Yao Hanking, who was standing at the side, seemed to have noticed Lin Fan's unhappiness. He hurriedly said, "Those who want to stay, go to the square and register with Manager K. The quota is limited. If you're late, we'll take it as an application to resign. After registration, you can come back to work officially tomorrow." He did not think that Lin Fan was joking when he said that he would double their salary and pay N+2 compensation. One had to know. Lin Fan had just spent 2 billion to buy Kinkin Toy Factory. After Yao Hanking finished speaking, the employees no longer dared to make any noise and rushed to the square. Soon the entire workshop became empty and silent. Lin Fan nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. Even though it was just 2 simple words, in Yao Hanking's ears, they sounded like beautiful music. "Thank you for your praise," Yao Hanking said happily. Lin Fan said, "Now teach me how to make toys." "All right," Yao Hanking said. Yao Hanking held a small motor and plastic cover while saying, "These are the parts of the toy car, you just need to assemble them." As he spoke, he assembled about a dozen components together. Soon, a mini car appeared in front of him. After installing the battery, it could run at a relatively fast speed. A minute after Yao Hanking had finished assembling it, Lin Fan finished assembling another one. This was normal. After all, making this toy was very simple. Lin Fan had a photographic memory, so how could he not finish assembling it quickly? Yao Hanking looked at Lin Fan's quick and perfect installation of the toy and could not help but praise, "Mr. Lin, your assembly speed is so fast." Lin Fan ignored him and focused on the mission system. Mission: buy 1 million toys, 1 million, 1 million, and make 100 different toys, 100. Reward: perfect artificial limbs as well as the machinery, tools, and principles for making artificial limbs. Lin Fan said, "Make the next toy." "All right," Yao Hanking said. Then they assembled Thomas and friends, different Ultramans, Iron Man in various positions, many toy guns, excavators, slides, and so on. It had to be said that there were indeed many types of toys in Kinkin Toy Factory. Yao Hanking was also proficient in making all kinds of toys. In the blink of an eye, 3 hours had passed. Yao Hanking picked up another set of components and was about to assemble them. At this moment, Lin Fan, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "That's enough." That was because a clear notification sounded in his mind. Ding! Mission completed. Buy 1 million toys, 1 million, 1 million, and make 100 different toys, 100. You've obtained perfect artificial limbs as well as the machinery, tools, and principles for making artificial limbs. Mission accomplished. At the same time, Lin Fan's mind was filled with a lot of knowledge about artificial limbs. After a while, a smile appeared on his face. According to the prosthetic knowledge provided by the system, he knew that Hu Shaodong could stand up. When Yao Hanking heard Lin Fan's words, he heaved a sigh of relief. After making toys for 3 hours, he was a little tired. Lin Fan said, "All right, that's all for today. I'll come back tomorrow." "All right," Yao Hanking replied. Then Lin Fan did not stay any longer and drove the Cullinan into the distance. In the courtyard of the Hu family. After Hu Shaodong took 3 bottles of medical water, his overall condition was no different from before, except that his legs still had not grown back. There was no difference. That was not true. In fact, there was still a difference. Hu Shaodong had been suffering from ringing in his ears, nasal obstruction, sore throat, and other ailments for many years, but all of them had disappeared without a trace. Hu Shaodong saw that the Hu family members still had some sadness on their faces, so he forced a smile and said, "Dad, Mom, Uncle, Aunt, you don't have to be unhappy. I think it's good this way. In the future I don't have to train or run around. I can always be by your side." Everyone could tell that he was trying to comfort them. They suppressed their urge to cry and nodded. Lin Fan had that magic potion. Since he said that he can make Shaodong stand up again, I believe it'll happen. When Hu Shaodong heard this, his heartbeat quickened. Soon, however, he shook his head helplessly. A method? What method? If Lin Fan did have a method, he would have said it out loud just now. It was impossible to regrow legs out of thin air. "Tianshan, didn't you just call Lin Fan? Did he say what he was doing?" Hu Tian hesitated for a moment and said, He said he went to the toy factory." Her aunt clearly wanted Hu Tian to say something to comfort Hu Shaodong. However, if she really said words of reassurance, what would Lin Fan do when he came? At this time, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. It would also make things difficult for Lin Fan. Hu Tian did not want Lin Fan to be in a difficult position. In fact, when Lin Fan left the Hu family, he said that he wanted to go to the toy factory. However, Hu Shaodong and the Hu family still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. What if they had heard wrongly? What if Lin Fan went to find a godly potion that could help Hu Shaodong stand up? At this moment, after hearing Hu Tian's words, the last bit of hope in everyone's hearts turned into a bubble. "What is he doing in the toy factory now?" someone asked in a low voice. Hu Shaodong smiled and said, "Maybe Lin Fan went to the toy factory because he wants to customize toys for my future nephews and nieces. Not bad. Tianshan, it's time for you to have a child." When Hu Tian heard this, her pretty face could not help but blush. When the Hu family heard this, their mood improved slightly, and a hint of anticipation appeared on their faces. At this moment, the sound of brisk footsteps could be heard from outside. It was Lin Fan, who had been out for a few hours. At this moment, Lin Fan walked in with a big box and shouted, "Second brother Hu, you'll be able to stand up soon." As soon as he said this, Hu Nanshan, Hu Tian, Hu Kaikshuan, and Hu Shaodong, who was lying on the bed, turned around. All eyes were on Lin Fan. Hu Shaodong could stand up soon. Everyone's hearts began to beat faster and faster. Hu Tian could not help but walk forward and say, "Lin Fan, is what you said true?" Lin Fan smiled. "When have I ever lied to you? Don't worry." As he spoke, he gently patted the back of Hu Tian's hand. Then he carried the big box to the bed. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Fan took out prosthetic legs from the big box. Lin Fan introduced, "These are prosthetics. After they're installed, they can perfectly replace the original legs. Second brother Hu, your whole body might be a little numb later." "All right," Hu Shaodong nodded. Lin Fan lifted Hu Shaodong's lower body. Even though Hu Shaodong's injuries had all healed, one could still see the hideous wounds on his legs. Many people from the Hu family felt their hearts tremble. They felt extremely sad. Lin Fan took out the prosthetic legs and compared them to the thighs. Then, he connected one end of the prosthetic legs to Hu Shaodong's broken ones. Just as Lin Fan said, Hu Shaodong's whole body felt numb. At this moment Hu Shaodong seemed to have lost consciousness, even his brain stopped thinking. In the eyes of the Hu family, the liquid on the prosthetic legs suddenly squirmed violently and seeped into Hu Shaodong's broken legs. It was very strange. About 3 minutes later, the liquid disappeared. The prosthetic legs were perfectly connected to Hu Shaodong's body. It was as if these were Hu Shaodong's legs and not artificial limbs. At this moment, the numbness in Hu Shaodong's body gradually disappeared. "Are you done?" he asked after a pause. Lin Fan nodded. "All right, second brother Hu, try standing up." "All right," Hu Shaodong replied. The next moment he was completely stunned. He really stood up. He could walk forward, walk back, and even spin. He was extremely agile and free. It was as if his legs had grown back. He jumped excitedly. He jumped 2 meters high. His head hit the roof. Then he landed steadily on the ground. This scene not only shocked Hu Shaodong but also everyone in the Hu family. It was as though his legs had grown back. He had a pair of super legs. Hu Shaodong widened his eyes and looked down at his legs. His face was filled with disbelief. In fact, he did not have much hope for the prosthetic limbs at first. After all, they were just prosthetics. However, what was the situation now? Even though Hu Shaodong had experienced many things at this moment, he could not help but stutter, Lin Fan my, these are. Lin Fan said, "These are prosthetics, are they useful?" Hu Shaodong nodded vigorously and said, "But why do I feel like they're really my legs? No, they're even better than my own legs, especially in terms of strength and speed." As he spoke, he kicked his legs and ran quickly. Lin Fan explained, "This is normal. This is because the artificial limbs are already connected to your nerves and tendons. Of course, you can control them like your own legs. As for the strength and speed, it's because of the materials." "That's great, Shaodong has legs again," cried his aunt happily. "I think you should take a look at." After a pause, the aunt continued, Would his legs break? How should he take care of them? Are they made from metal? Will they be harmful to the body?" She was not doubting Lin Fan. It was out of concern for her family member. After all, she did not know about artificial limbs. Lin Fan was not angry and explained, "Don't worry, the materials used for these prosthetic limbs are far beyond medical grade. They won't cause any harm to the body. As for the damage to the prosthetic limbs, they'll be damaged if they're blown up by artillery shells. But the prosthetics are very stable, they're water and fire resistant, there's no need to take special care of them." When everyone heard Lin Fan's words, the admiration on their faces intensified. The prosthetics could be considered a pair of transplanted legs. They were stronger and more perfect. Hu Nanshan shouted, "Shaodong, what are you doing? Hurry up and thank Lin Fan." The prosthetics were definitely a mystical item that could be compared to medical water. Hu Nanshan knew that Lin Fan must have paid a huge price for it. Hu Shaodong also understood this and said solemnly, "Lin Fan, thank you." "It's just a small matter," Lin Fan smiled. "Besides, you're Tianqian's second brother, so there's no need to thank me." In order to thank Lin Fan for saving Hu Shaodong and giving him the prosthetics, the Hu family specially organized a grand banquet. Without a doubt, Lin Fan was the main character of this meal. Everyone in the Hu family, including Old Master Hu Nanshan, kept toasting Lin Fan. Everyone ate and drank happily. The night gradually darkened. Hu Tian and Lin Fan walked side by side on the small hill behind the courtyard. "Lin Fan, thank goodness I have you," Hu Tian sighed sincerely. As she spoke, she could not help but think of the scene of Lin Fan solving a math problem seriously. She thought of the scene of Lin Fan writing calligraphy elegantly. She thought of the scene when Lin Fan came to congratulate her grandfather on his birthday. Finally, she thought of the scene of Lin Fan coming to her house. Hu Tian's face turned red and her entire body went limp. She could not help but lean toward Lin Fan. "Oh epsilon. 3 epsilon. Lin Fan and Hu Tian only walked down the hill when it was very late. Their faces were slightly red. After being blown by the cool breeze for a while, their faces gradually returned to normal. At this moment, Hu Tian seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Lin Fan, what were you doing at the toy factory today?" In fact, she had been curious about this for a long time. However, there were too many people in the Hu family's compound earlier. She was worried that Lin Fan would be put in a difficult position, so she did not ask. Lin Fan said, I did some research and developed the prosthetics. Research. Moreover, he did research in a toy factory. He only studied it for an afternoon. Yet he had developed prosthetics with such miraculous effects. This. Hu Tian knew that Lin Fan had solved several world-class mathematics problems and invented the earthquake prediction device, the human islet recovery drug, the super battery, the carbon-based photolithographic machine, and many other things. He was called a super genius by many people. However, when Hu Tian heard Lin Fan's answer, she was still shocked. She looked at Lin Fan, and her beautiful eyes flashed. After a gust of wind blew past, Hu Tian's pretty face, which had finally returned to normal, turned red again. She approached Lin Fan again. Then she pulled Lin Fan back to the small hill.